All right, what's up, everybody? Was this episode 39 of Into the Minefield. We're back. Hope everybody's doing well out there. We have an interesting show for you today. So this should be a good one. We have good friend of the channel and member of the Panda Crew, Daniel, joining us. Do you want to take a moment, introduce yourself, tell people anything they should know about you, and anything that pertains to, you can say whatever you want. I didn't want to say anything. I don't want to put you on blast, put anything out there that you'd prefer. Anyway, whatever you think is relevant to what people should know.
My name is Daniel Flares. I'm an Orthodox Christian. I live in Nashville, North Carolina. That's basically, I don't know what else you want me to get into, but that's basically it.
No, that was good. I didn't know if you put your exact location out there or not, so I just didn't want to.
Yeah.
Like I said, didn't want to put any.
I'm a little north right now. I'm a little maybe about an hour north.
Okay. I just realized Jethro's here. I don't know if he, I don't know when he got. Hope he hadn't been sitting there too long. We're also going to bring in friend and also mod of the channel, Jethro. There he is. What's up? How's it going?
What's up, guys? Am I live?
Yes, we are live.
How's my mic? I'm walking around the hood right now, so I don't know if you can hear the background noise at all.
A little bit. It's not too bad though. It's a nice ambient sound.
I have a UPS guy about to run me over right now, so he's not the way. But anyway, so what's going on, guys? Oh, you wanted an intro? Well, hang on. I'm your resident slow boy in all the chats. That's about all you need to know about me.
Go ahead.
But anyway, I am pertaining to today's show. I am full disclosure, doxed, born and raised in Asheville, North Carolina. So hopefully I can give at least a little bit of background if people are curious. Look at this, I'm already out of breath. Jeez, I'm so fat. But anyway, so hopefully we can fill in a little bit of the gaps when we go through any type of discussion today. Hopefully I can help out a little bit. But it's a great area, and King Dansky,
hello,
is here. So and I was glad to hear King Dansky is okay, considering everything that has happened in the past week. So anyway, good to join you gentlemen.
Yeah, great to have you here. I felt bad because Thursday evening I was messaging with Jethro and just kind of seeing how everything was going. And then he messaged me back like Thursday night, and then I messaged him Friday morning. And anyway, I made a joke about something about floating from the rain, and that was before I knew like how bad everything was up there. And then once I started seeing what was coming out, I was like, oh man, whoops. But poor choice of words. But so what was I mentioned I had a few questions I wanted to ask y'all. What was the storm itself like? Was the storm itself pretty bad there, or did it kind of come after the storm itself had passed, like when things got really bad?
Well, Dansky, you may want to go first. I have a chainsaw in my left ear right now. So.
Yeah, so it was a little interesting. The Wednesday before everything went down, there was another really, really big storm here. I guess the first push of it or whatever. And I own a soup company, and we were cooking. And when I was done and driving home, I was stuck in the storm, and I was praying the entire time because I'm from California. We don't have storms like that. And so it was really, really bad. The freeway started flooding and everything. And it was very, very dangerous. And it caught a lot of people off guard. And, that was before the bigger storm came in. And so I had no idea, it's hard to it's hard to understand what's going on or who's telling you the truth. Everything seems so exaggerated in a sense, where like everyone's always chicken littling, like that, this is going to be the worst storm ever, and then like nothing happens. And so I didn't know what was about to come, and so I think it was probably Friday night when like the actual hurricane storm came in, and it was wild. Like it was probably the windiest and the rainiest period I've ever had in life. It was horrible. So it was one of those things where it hit at night and early in the morning, and it was like, obviously very hard to sleep through that. And so kind of woke up the next day, and it was just like utter devastation everywhere.
Yeah, it was about the same for me. It was I had not been paying attention really to the weather reports as far as like Tuesday and Wednesday. I had heard that a hurricane was coming, so I'm assuming at least most of the ones in recent memory is that most of the hurricanes, at least that affect us further north from Florida, come from the Atlantic side and do not come from the Gulf. So I saw a little bit about that on Twitter, etc. So I monitored it just a little bit. And meanwhile, you hear the usual future forecast for a week out or whatever. Oh, yeah, it's possible. And, well, we hear that every time up here, I'll tell you. And throughout everyone that's come up here, nobody thinks to evacuation. It doesn't even come into the picture. Like we have never evacuated here for at least that I can remember, certainly in my lifetime. So yeah, Wednesday night was interesting. I was out and about, and I don't know what time it was. I was definitely looking at the skies were interesting, and you can feel that crisp air when it comes in, and you're like, well, I definitely know it's going to rain. And I think that was probably about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And at that point, yeah, I hadn't really been paying attention to the news or the weather updates. But so anyway, and then, yeah, the rain comes. And I mean, I got out to do something. And down in my neck of the woods, it one of the stretches near one of the rivers that they keep showing in all the social media posts, etc. I mean, it was just slammed with, it was the heaviest downpour I can remember in quite some time. I had my wiper on full blast, and I mean, I could barely see out the windshield. Dansky may have a similar thing, but yeah, it was crazy. And I mean, normally a trip that would take me about 20 minutes took me about an hour, and it was and I got to one of the spots. It was a certain amount of flooding was already kind of taking place in one area, and people were not sure if they wanted to go straight on through, turn around, back up, go another way, So anyway, eventually that kind of cleared up, and so that was round one. So that was Wednesday evening, and just like Dansky was saying, I can't remember what time it was on Friday, but it definitely came in Friday night and Saturday morning. Yeah, most of the time I wasn't even looking outside. I kind of waited till it was over. I was definitely hearing all of the sounds you suspect you would hear, and yeah, it was pretty crazy when it got done. And I had no idea, because I'm kind of situated south of town. I had no idea about what it was kind of looking like in town or north of town, east of west, whatever, until basically I got back on social media and got cell reception back, which Friday morning, I guess I don't know what time it started. It was early, but a little bit of cell reception. And then definitely by about 8 a.m., no cell reception, just completely drops. So I'm thinking, well, okay, we'll give it a few hours, or maybe, at the latest tomorrow. That's typically what happens. And so anyway, yeah, so fast forward to, Sunday rolls around, still nothing. It's giving me the SOS up in the service portion of my phone. Okay, well, it certainly will be later today. And no, Monday rolls around, nothing. I'm thinking, okay, well, this is definitely more serious than I was expecting.
Yeah.
So, and definitely what I have gone through before. So anyway, the only thing that we had was a battery operated radio, and we were just listening to the broadcast. The only outlet for most people was this station in town was using Starlink, and I guess they still are, to broadcast for missing people, and people are calling in from all over the country. I mean, it was crazy. I hadn't really heard that many people call in, but sorry, I'm walking past some people working. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, cool. But anyway, day and night, I mean, what was interesting is we were keeping the broadcast on, and the internet was out, still out. But anyway, we just kept the radio on, but about one day in, we got power back in our neck of the woods, which we were like, okay, well, great, must be fine. Certainly everywhere in our subdivision. So I'll get out and walk around in the evenings, and I noticed about half our subdivision had power, and the other half did not. Which people will say, okay, well, that's normal because of the setup of the poles, etc. I don't know what the terminology is, but anyway, they say, well, that seems pretty normal. But so they're still, as far as I can see, because I'm still going around at night, there are still people without power in our subdivision. While meanwhile, half of us have power and the other half have not. I mean, the entire time. Which I'm assuming, which in a way it doesn't surprise me, because a lot of these disparate areas that they're kind of showing, the Black Mountains, the Swannanoas, etc., are north side of town, east and west. And I would imagine that they are definitely prioritizing that area first before they start moving south. So, but as far as that, and I know I'm rambling, so I'll wrap it up here in just a second. But anyway, but yeah, we I kind of on Friday I got out as soon as it was over, and then drove around, and I think the only place that I was seeing probably within, I would estimate, a 3-mile radius of kind of where we are. There was one street light, maybe two, that were working. One grocery store was open, and everybody was piling into this place, and I had no idea why. I mean, before I ventured out, I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's just a few lights that are out, but this grocery store is slammed. And of course they have gas, etc., and everybody's in the gas line. It's bananas, right? So I'm like, well, surely there are some other places that are open, certainly another grocery store or something nearby. So I went out both in the afternoon and in the evening, And I mean, it was just like people had no, bro. I'm sure people in Florida are kind of used to this with traffic signals and stuff when hurricanes come in, but it's like people don't know if they are stopping and going when they're on the highways and stuff. And like some people are stopping like you would at a four-way and you know, letting traffic happen like it usually does at a stop sign or something. So people are like, man, I don't know how many wrecks are going to end up on this thing or not when I'm kind of going around town a little bit. So anyway, but every place I was within, I would say probably 3 to 5 miles. I mean, there was nothing open. And I mean, not necessarily, I didn't necessarily see flooding in these places either. It's just that everybody was kind of staying put in their homes, you know, and which I can understand. Or maybe it was flooding where their homes are, etc. I don't know where all these people live, of course, but I mean, nothing was open. It was bananas. I was like, well, okay, well, I'll go down this way. It's like, nope, no grocery stores, no gas stations, no whatever else. And, you know, every small bit, everything is closed. And I'm like, man, so I mean, this must be serious. And of course, eventually, I started seeing the stuff in town. It was like, oh man. But anyway, that was sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, I was gonna. I was gonna bring in our fourth. He's been in here for a minute. Welcome, BLA.
Hey.
I just wanted to say real quick, if y'all, I don't know how many of y'all have been. I don't live in the mountains, but I've spent time in the North Carolina mountains, and it was interesting because Daniel mentioned that was like the worst wind and rain you've ever seen, and the weather. I don't know if people haven't been there. Like the weather in the mountains can be pretty extreme. I've seen some intense thunderstorms there. And I have, you know, friends and family members who live up there or have lived up there, or, you know, there's several colleges up there, universities that people have been to. And, you know, some of the things, like, especially the winter, again, I mean, it's a different kind of storm, but they're like, there are sometimes where you feel like you're going to get like blown off the mountain because the winds, like when the blizzards, or I don't know if they're technically blizzards, snowstorms, whatever, come through. And so, yeah, that, I think, yeah, that just goes to, you know, it goes to the intensity of the storm I mean, you know, and I think that a lot of people, they don't think about, because it's like the mountains don't get hurricanes. Like that's something that happens in, you know, Florida and the Gulf and you know, up the East Coast and things like that. And then when,
it's usually down. Sorry to interject, but it's typically most of the time it is downgraded to tropical storm almost every single time. I can say that for sure. Everyone I've experienced.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. BLA, what do you think about all this? About you've been listening to it for the last few minutes?
Well, it's terrible. What's up, Jethro? Hey, Daniel, good to see you.
Good to see you.
What's
BLA?
What's up, Maddie? I gave you a shout out last night on the stream. Told everybody y'all were going to be doing this today. So
I appreciate it. I was in and out of the stream last night a little bit, so I only caught parts of it here and there.
Good to have Jethro as on the ground. We got a water buffalo jackknife up here on 495. We got
deep behind FEMA region, enemy lines, FEMA region 4.
That's right. That was a Good Morning Vietnam reference, if anybody remembers that.
Right.
No, it's Jethro's down there in FEMA region 666 in the acid rain district. And all that AJ has come to say years ago has come to fruition, right? We got trucks lined up with body bags all the way. I mean, it is terrible. And I'll just say that I'm laughing because, you know, when ladies say, I laugh when I'm nervous. Have you ever met a woman who does that? I laugh when I'm nervous. It's like some psychotic thing. No, but I was talking to Jethro before this happened, and I was like, damn, look at this rain coming, you know. And he was asking me about my sister because she lives down on the Gulf Coast, and she's usually the one to deal with hurricanes. And she lives in a city that has no. So just to give some perspective, she lives in a city that was French, it was Spanish, it was English, and there's no physical markers of any of that because the hurricanes continuously wipe away everything. And just, you know, I kind of use Katrina as a frame of reference for this because who thought it would be this bad? So I was talking to Jethro and all this was coming, and I looked at the forecast and it said 10 inches of rain in one day, and I was like, "What? 10 inches of rain in one day from a hurricane coming to up from the Gulf is crazy." I mean, I know that to me it's kind of like if Charlottesville, Charlottesville gets hit by the hurricane, because it's in the Blue Ridge Mountains and. But not like this. And so the flooding was, I guess when you're on the mountainside, the flooding can be a thing, but like to see the river, I mean, this is unbelievable. The most unbelievable part or believable part is that this Katrina-like event has happened. And there's hardly any coverage in MSM. I mean, of course it's MSM, but I mean, just in context, like, they talk about it or reference it, like they had the debate, the presidential debate, and we were covering, and it was like referenced a couple times, but there's hardly any coverage. And I guess part of that is there's nobody, with social media. I mean, you can post stuff, but like Jethro was saying, that I can't believe anybody's even got a signal to send out. And it's like Katrina. If any of you guys remember Katrina in 2005, was it 2005? I mean, it was the biggest thing ever, and they put everybody in the Astrodome, and then the roof of the Astrodome collapsed, and it was Geraldo, battling the winds and drowning in the Gulf and all this shit. And I've, my sister's where my sister worked, there's a water line about 20 feet up that everything was flooded. The whole place was underwater. One of her friends that I talked to last time I was down there, this is in Mississippi, talked about how, he has a boat, and when that happened, the entire place, he got on his boat, and then he got on a jet ski, and he was riding through town. There's no town, and he had to tell which way he was going because the street lamps were 10 feet underwater, and he could tell by the traffic, by the car lights, 20 feet underwater.
Golly.
So he's going around, and he saw a person in the Gulf. Like, this is out in the Gulf. You can actually walk out into the Gulf for like a mile before it gets, you're still knee deep. But this was now fully submerged. And he went out in the Gulf and he found there was a lady floating out there, and he recognized her. And he was like, "Linda." And she was like, "Have you seen my husband?" And he was like, "No, but she was floating out. Like, she was way, way out." And he was like, "Come on, get on the back of this thing." And she was like, Just leave me. Go and find my husband." And so he went back to where town was, and the husband was on a rooftop with 3 of his friends drinking beer. And he said, "Linda's out in the Gulf looking for you. She thinks you're dead." And he said, "Oh, go on and leave that bitch. I'll go get her later." And then he tried to go back out, but then when he went back out, there was a line of boats from the National Guard. And the guard and he tried to get through, there was a line of boats. He tried to go, and they said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I got to go rescue this woman out there." And the guy pulled a rifle on him and said, "You're not going anywhere. You're not going past this line." And he said, "No, I got to go get the woman." And the guy put his gun right up against his forehead and said, "I said you're not going." Because because it was looters apparently. So he couldn't go back out and rescue the woman out in the Gulf. She's fine, by the way. Somebody else in the town got her. But I'm saying all that because I've heard that about, I don't know if there's National Guard there or whatever, but I've heard about, there's stories going on about, these dump trucks and FEMA and like people. I heard one thing about there was a dump truck company, and they were loading the dump trucks, and they were going, and then FEMA said, "You got to turn around and dump the garbage back on the lawns where you found it, and we'll pick it up later," because FEMA had blocked the dump truck company back when the guys got back to Florida. Have you heard this? I mean, there's no way for me. You hear all these stories. Jethro, does that sound like something that's true?
I would not put anything past them right now.
Uh-huh.
I have not heard the dump truck story.
Yeah.
But I have heard some, at least as far as I know, at least the only main way in here right now is 26. The main interstates that kind of run through this side of things are Interstate 40 and 26.
Yeah.
and 40 runs is laterally, horizontal. I always forget lateral longitude.
Yeah. So if I go from here and I'm going to Tennessee and I'm going to Mississippi and I'm going through Tennessee, right? And I go on I-40, I go from whatever it is up in Stanton, then I go down to 40, right? And I go and I keep going to Tennessee, I'd be fine. But if I take that cutoff and go down towards Asheville, is that cut off?
I believe it is
Like
from that side as well. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I was thinking more from the Tennessee side because
Yeah.
One of the things I sent Coot was somebody was saying there's a huge stretch from 40 kind of going northwest, kind of from Asheville into Johnson City and Tennessee, etc. And it's just completely wiped out. And
that's crazy.
They're saying it'll probably be open maybe a year. There you can see the current post. I'm not sure if they've changed it, but they're like, yeah, it's potential reopening in about a year or so.
What?
Yeah, a year. It says September or October of 25.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I think one of the things. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, I was just kidding. I mean, for a lot of people that are coming in and out, they're going to have to find other ways.
Yeah.
And I have some friends that are more in South Carolina, and they have family kind of right over the mountains in Tennessee. And unless they change that, unless that situation changes, that's going to add about another hour and a half to a trip that would probably take them maybe an hour, a little over an hour. I mean, it'll be 3 hours coming both ways, back and forth. And those they have to take the back roads and everything.
Well, Jethro, let me ask a question real quick. Aside from, the unfortunate people who passed away, God rest their soul, is everybody else? I mean, I imagine everybody else is, the spirit of the Appalachistani citizen is probably pretty strong. I know there's a lot of stuff going on about the government and, not showing up and everything, but in a sense, I also had the back of my mind kind of keep thinking, like, do you want them to? In many ways. I mean, and I don't mean that lightly. I mean, but what I mean is that mountain people and especially Southern people are obviously pretty resilient. So, you don't hear a lot of complaint. You hear a lot of expressions of loss and, wonder and, how could this happen? But you don't hear a lot of expressions of complaining, which was the case with Katrina. So.
Yeah, it's sorry to keep jumping in. Dansky or Coot, please jump in with your feelings on this as well. But growing up, I'll just speak for myself because I wouldn't qualify myself as really the stereotypical like hillbilly and etc. Your typical what you would think of as kind of hillbilly Appalachian or whatever. But I have a lot of family around these parts, and they definitely are. And and as far as the ancestry goes and all that, I mean, you could go on through that. So but I would just say, for speaking for myself, that's always been kind of a chip on my shoulder, pertaining to how it's always portrayed in movies, etc. And it's exactly kind of what you're talking about. And so people might have noticed that in kind of interactions when I get a little defensive about it. Certainly the depictions of Southern culture as a whole or Appalachian culture as a whole, etc. So, but I would definitely agree with that. I mean, I can certainly tell you, at least in my neck of the woods, not surprisingly too, is that I haven't seen this many people outside. I mean, and forever. Just even whether it be helping each other or they're just out exercising or out with their families. I've seen kids with lemonade stands, and it's like I probably haven't seen that since late 90s. I don't know, something like that. So I'm seeing a lot of it is a lot of the community coming together, etc. And it is that kind of I will say it is a Southern spirit. And well, as far as the viewpoint from the elites, we'll call them, they do have a particular disdain for the Appalachian region because of that spirit. They know that they're strong. We'll say that they're traditional values, etc. And it is very strong in the region. But I mean, everybody you meet, you hear the whole thing, Southern hospitality, right? But I mean, everybody you run into down here, and they're always asking, "You need anything? You need it?" I mean, there have been, I don't know how many people have come over and like taken a shower and charged their phones in the house. And, I mean, it's pretty crazy. And we've just been going around in the subdivision, and they're just like, "Oh, okay, well, we'll come over if we need to." Or, "No, we're fine."
So it's been a week. It's been a week, and so you have power, but there's still people there that don't have power at all.
Oh yeah,
Right.
So-
Yeah,
That's crazy.
and sorry, Dan, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, so there's still like, at least from everyone in Asheville, there's pretty much still no power. There's no running water, and there's barely any Wi-Fi. So no one's taking showers. No one has any clean drinking water. Most of the power is still gone. And then, insult to injury, there's no Wi-Fi. So there's no way for people to connect and figure out what's going on. And then there's a lot of people that can't get in touch with their family members. That's been one of the things I've had a hard time with. So I have my family in town, and it's really hard getting a hold of them because there's no power to charge your phone. And then every once in a while, you'll get a signal that you can use it if you do have the power for your phone. So it's a complete catastrophe. And then when the water coming back on, they're talking about weeks, and so I don't know how you have a population of over 100,000 people without, clean drinking water, the ability to shower. We're all so dependent on the internet that it's really hard, it's been devastating.
Well, I know that a lot of people like the water is a problem because the well water is probably contaminated, right? Because of the intense flooding. So otherwise it probably would be okay. But the fact that the flooding was so bad has made the well water undrinkable.
Yeah, and apparently we there was a boil notice for certainly probably at least through the entire weekend. And I mean, we didn't even hear that, so we were just whatever, drinking and washing, and And I've noticed I've said that. Yeah, we did not. We've been kind of fortunate down on this side of things. We're kind of in between people further south from us who have no power, no water, and then further up, kind of Dansky's way, like he's saying, nobody has anything, and we're kind of situated in a little spot where we're up above higher elevation, and we never lost water, and we lost power only for about a day. And I don't know why that is.
That's pretty blessed. Earlier,
yeah, it's been crazy because, like I was saying earlier, I was just assuming, hey, it'll be out for about a day, and then everybody in the subdivision will be back on, and it just didn't happen. And I was like, wow, this is definitely more serious than I was considering it. I mean, everybody's saying they either don't have power. It was one or the other or both, and most of the time it was both, that they didn't have power, water, or internet, And it's like, well, we have both. So, and we have one of those little solar charging blocks, it's like we're just handing it out to people. Let's go ahead and use it. And they're like, we're just telling everybody. And they're like, you have both power and water? Yeah, come on over,
Well, the longest I've ever gone without water, I don't know about perspective, but I went a week without water, and that happens quite frequently here. But it'd be like if this place flooded and then you had to get water from the James River, and no matter how many times you boil it, you still got brain worms. And I went a week without water because we had a boil notice because there were ketones. There was ketones and some kind of Homer Simpson nuclear cancer fluid in the river, messing up the water treatment plant. So I keep all my kitchen cabinets underneath the sink and all around are full of 2-liter empty bottles of Coke full of water that I boil just in case that happens again. And then my parents' house got flooded in Tropical Storm Gaston, which was from some hurricane, where the locks in Richmond closed too late. And then it kept all the water in. So the entire downtown was flooded. And then my parents' house was outside the city, was on a hill, and that got completely flooded. They had to gut the whole bottom half of the house because of the mold that resulted from all that. So that's the closest I can come to. But I mean, this is insane.
Yeah, one of the things that's interesting is since Katrina was brought up, is sort of the contrast, because I haven't even really looked for any kind of mainstream coverage of this, like in terms of what's going on. But it's interesting because in Katrina, you had like Brian Williams claiming he had dysentery from like drinking hurricane water or whatever, and you had like it was round the clock coverage, wall to wall. I mean, they had footage inside the Superdome, outside the Superdome. It was like footage everywhere. But this, and I mean, granted, it's a totally different area. Like the mountains are harder to get to. Like I'm not. It's not a one-to-one comparison, but just when you look at the scale of the disaster and see how it was covered by the media. And then I think it was Mel or somebody was saying earlier, like didn't even know about this until I think she said until you told her about it. And so and it seems like everything I've been seeing is like cell phone video of, I mean, was it the French Broad that flooded, or was that the main one? Okay.
Yeah.
I figured that was the one that did.
Yeah, French Broad, Swanano River are the two big ones. I'm kind of fairly close to French Broad, and that's the one that it completely locked up Wednesday night. And then by Friday, I was just seeing all of the posting, and I could see that because it's kind of going down and further into town, et cetera. And it's just like, man, seeing a lot of these places that I've seen some flooding in areas kind of around there before, but it's never gotten to that level. I'll just say that.
Well, the landslides the videos of the families at the farm, and you see the biblical landslide. I guess it's a heart machine directed landslide or something. Just washing away the entire farm is a California video. I mean, that's what you would see in California. Daniel, didn't you say you're from California originally?
Yeah, I'm from the Bay Area.
Yeah. So have you been here long? I mean, have you been on this side of things long? How long have you been? And you said you've never been through a hurricane like this.
Yeah, 7-8 years.
Yeah.
We didn't have this kind of weather out in, the West Coast.
I mean, the hurricanes here on the East Coast are no joke. I mean, anybody in me and Maddie and Jethro and Blocksky and everybody, on the East Coast and down in the South that dealt with hurricanes. I mean, the average hurricane here just drops oak trees right on top of a house, and that's the typical thing that you see. But it's the landslides and the massive flooding California style that I think is really jarring with this, and not to mention the death toll is just insane. I mean, entire towns underwater, under mud.
Yeah, it's a lot higher than what's reporting. So we were.
It's got to be.
Yeah, we were having our parish was going to have our like Greek festival during that weekend. Mm-hmm. And obviously we weren't able to do it. So for the following couple days, we had all this food. And so we were just cooking it and giving it out to the community. Whoever was hungry could come by the church and we'd feed them and all that stuff. And, the stories that we're getting from people that were coming, where they were talking about having to pick dead bodies off of trees and like pick them out of the river. Like it's really sad. It's really tragic. And, we know enough about the government to understand that they don't have our best interests at heart, and they're, callous, and they're really not interested. But all the people here, it feels a little bit kind of like after 9/11, where everyone has like a unifying thing to bind them, regardless of your ideology. And, through a lot of the tragedy and all of the suffering that people are doing, I believe that God still works his miracles through that. And there's a lot of people coming together, and you're seeing people really helping one another, and really kind of like, there's a greater sense of meaning right now in this area. Like people are struggling, people are suffering. And so the meaning level rises, and it's been one of the bigger blessings through something like this that I wouldn't expect, because usually viewing a tragedy, all you hear is about the tragic stuff, right? And I'm not making light of any of that, because obviously that's a part of the story. But there's a lot of love, and there's a lot of people coming together. and there's a lot of people helping each other, and there's a lot of people sacrificing for each other, which is a beautiful thing to see.
And Patel, I just wanted to jump tailcoat on that is, and people aren't familiar with Asheville. It's notorious. It has a reputation, we'll put it that way, of being very, very dark blue area politically. If you look at electoral map of North Carolina, about every year, no matter how they redistrict it or anything, you have the triangle area out east, and it's the blue areas right around in there, and then it's red all the way west until one county. It's one big blue dot, Buncombe County, on the western side of the state, and it's like a haven for, and it has been for years, for hippie lifestyle.
Widespread panic, had to cancel their concert. That was the biggest tragedy.
Yeah,
Exactly. Let me tell you, a lot of people were probably disappointed by that with the hurricane, even with the hurricane.
The first drum circle I ever saw, I was in downtown Asheville. I think it was in middle school, and there was some, like, it wasn't like a huge festival, it was just some event going on downtown. And so we're walking around, and there's this group of people sitting in a circle, like white dudes with dreads and wearing clothes.
That was me and Jethro and Daniel. Maddie, why didn't you come up and say hi?
Just like sitting in the middle of the road in a drum circle. I was like, this is insane. This is all. Yeah. And that's an interesting thing about about North Carolina. Is there's like 3 deep blue areas. It's like Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, and then Asheville. And but anyway, I mean, I think that's a cool kind of thing, like Daniel was saying, that that you can see the people putting anything like that aside and really like coming together. And I think that's, I don't know, I think that's kind of, and as odd as it may sound to put it this way, that's kind of a beautiful thing to see about people just doing whatever they have to help those out. I mean, I've heard that like in other places and not even like even outside there, I've heard in other places in the Carolinas, like all the water, like the cases of water, the gallon jugs, all of that has been wiped out like across the state because people are taking it and driving it up to wherever they can get to donate it. And so I think seeing things like that is it's really cool. And I think amid all of the issues and division and all of that, it's kind of sad that it takes something like this for people to go to that level for each other. But I think regardless, it's been cool to hear about and see, and like a lot of with like helicopter pilots and people taking their helicopters out at their own expense, using their own fuel and on their own time, and to go to remote kind of areas and get people out. Because the thing with the mountains is, people may know this, may not. In like, you have different ways, like Jethro was mentioning, you have the interstates to get to the Asheville area, and then you have the back ways. But when you kind of get deeper, when you get out into other areas, there's, in some cases, at least to my understanding, in some of these places I've been, it's like there's one road in and out. And if that road is gone, then you're stuck there. Like you can't get out.
Yeah, it's 26 comes, goes from kind of southeast to northeast on a map. That's usually what people take here, going down to hit 95, going to Florida, etc. And coming up, if you were coming up, say, from South Carolina, Florida.
Is that the one that goes to Spartanburg, Jethro?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is the only, that side, we'll just say, of coming into town. That's the only way, main way in here, is that one little side of the interstate. So people are having to do the back roads if they're coming from west, if they're coming, say, from Tennessee, etc. They're either going to have to come around north, find some kind of back roads, or come south, go east, like into South Carolina, etc., and then just come 26 straight in. And I mean, I've heard that, and they've had 40 going east, which would go kind of to Charlotte, etc. I had heard, at least for a time, and I'm assuming they're still there, that, DeSantis sent up the National Guard, and they were at certain areas on 40 out that way. And like I was saying, on the east side of 40, it's just like it's gone.
Yeah.
Or completely damaged to where you can't even take it. So, I mean, but last I have heard, that's the only way in here, and that's the way people posting on Twitter, etc. That's how they're saying they're coming in, or they're just flying a helicopter in if they're able to,
Yeah, they're flying the helicopter until Dick Cheney finds out about the air traffic. Then he's going to be super pissed.
Right.
Well,
so what do y'all think about? I don't know if we there's been some theories and discussions. There's some things, weirdness kind of going on in Asheville. It was just discovered that there was a large lithium deposit, I think, right under Asheville, and so some of the theories is like we've seen with, if y'all have watched, not to self-promote here, but if y'all have seen the stream I did on the Narco Media Industrial Complex stream, one of the things, the book I was talking about in there that the author is writing about is sending in the police and military. They go to war with these drug traffickers, people flee, and then it happens to usually be in resource-rich areas. Now, that's a different kind of tactic, if you will. I'm not saying this was a tactic, but there are theories about this being a similar kind of thing, about trying to, because there's whole, like, places I've been before in the mountains. I've seen what is, people say like, oh, this is this place, and now it's gone. And you look and it's just, maybe some trees down and like piles of lumber. And so, have you all heard about this? What do you make of this, of their, is this taking advantage of the situation? And I mean, y'all are closer to it. Had you heard about the lithium thing? I think there was one article Jethro sent that there was something, it was something to the effect of like this one town could like power was like AI revolution or something.
Yeah.
What do y'all make of this? I'm sure y'all have heard people talking about this.
Well, I'll throw it to Dansky, because I have not been kind of north side of town, and a lot of these disparate communities that you're seeing, whether it's Black Mountains, Wananoa, Burnsville. I mean, you can go down the list. I'll just say, as a little thing on the side, is that one of the things we heard on the radio Friday night was that Black Mountain is kind of going east. If you were on 40, it's east of Asheville, about an hour. And we heard on the radio, I think it was Friday night, either that or Saturday. They were telling basically all the residents to just get out because there's nothing there, not even a fire department, nothing. And I mean, not even standing, you know what I mean? Or it's just completely wiped out. And they said, there's nothing here, so you might as well just get out, or, if you can, etc. But anyway, I was curious because I had not been up. I'm still kind of on the south side of things. So I was curious as far as all the relief, all the FEMA, can we say that word on YouTube? And, this context, I don't know. I'm trying to avoid certain things for you, Coot, but I'm curious. I'm curious, Daniel, have you seen any of this FEMA people come through or any of that stuff where you are?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, when we were working out in the church, I probably saw more kinds of helicopters being dropped in than I've ever seen before. And I'm staying at my godparents' place a little bit north, and every time we go back and forth, we see nothing but convoys of different kinds of trucks. So I'm assuming that they're coming in.
How are they interacting? I'm curious how they are kind of interacting with people, because of course all of these videos are popping up everywhere, and I'm kind of treating. I'm not trying to say one way or another how certain organizations are acting or not, because I haven't seen a lot of them down this way, but particularly with FEMA, they're saying this and that, and there's all kinds of accusations. So I was just kind of curious how they were interacting with you, if you'd spoken to them first person basis, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had any contact with any of that, and it's one of those situations where with the lack of cell service and that kind of stuff, like you guys probably know more what's going on in the city than I do. So all I have is like my firsthand interactions with things and then what I'm hearing through people. So in terms of how, FEMA or the government is interacting with the people here, like I really couldn't tell you. But I do know, to Coot's point, where, a lot of my friends in the area, we have a whole chain of people talking about the whole lithium mine situation and how, like I guess a week or two before the storm hit, there was, so apparently like BlackRock, and I forget what this other company's name was, they've been trying to buy the rights to these old mining towns to get their lithium for quite a while. And at every turn, the residents are like, yeah, we don't want you here, go away. And so I think it was like a couple weeks ago, they just finally signed the deal to where they would reopen these lithium mines to get it out. And then a week later, we have this catastrophic storm. And apparently, at least from what I've heard, the playbook is to, a natural disaster, the government comes in and gives you the amount of money for your property that it was worth before the flood, before they account in how much of the, mineral deposit treasure that you're sitting on.
Right.
So that's, and then also I've had a few parishioners here in town that are being called nonstop every single hour of every single day of people like these big corporations wanting to buy their house and buy their property. And it's obviously,
I mean, I've seen some things, like I said, along the lines of what you're saying, and some people are even posting, even in other towns, like things about either not evacuation, eviction notices, at least for a certain period of time. They're saying you got to get out of here for a month, you got to get out for 30 days, you got to do this, you got to do that. You know what I mean?
Never forget Katrina when they drew X's on the door and then held you at gunpoint so you couldn't go back into your house.
Yeah,
so I wouldn't be surprised. It's like Alex says, they're gonna you and your family, and you're already. We'll all be getting soon. We'll all be getting soon. It's over, right? And the people that do this, that serve the fallen one, Satan, want you and your family, right? No, but he's exactly right. Right, he's exactly right. These fucking people that totally ignore everything that happens here. There's an election coming up. There's the lithium mines. There's all this stuff, and then they don't do anything. And then when it's time to come in, and the people don't even want them there, and then they come in, and then they say, "Oh no, now we're going to give you money for your house, and you have to get out." Right?
Yeah,
everybody's got to go.
Speaking of government money, I just wanted to say something really quick. Now, I didn't look into this too deep. Two things real quick on this. There was, if I understood correct, first of all, I'm just going to read this. Arbitrage Andy, which is a great Instagram account, posted this on his story earlier. I had to take a screenshot. It's a tweet from Secretary Antony Blinken. This was posted at 6:04 p.m. yesterday. And it says the following: the U.S. is at the forefront of humanitarian response to the growing crisis in Lebanon, announcing nearly $157 million in assistance today. We are committed to supporting those in need and delivering essential aid to displaced civilians, refugees, and the communities hosting them. Now, I also saw, and I haven't looked into this super deeply, but what I heard reports that FEMA basically said, well, there's not a whole lot we can do for the Appalachian region, because we spent our entire budget on migrants this year. And so this is, to me, like, this is not, and especially Blinken posting that yesterday. I mean, this is not, people say like, oh, the government, these people are out of touch. They don't care. It's not that they don't care. They're not out of touch. It's an intentional middle finger, like Kamala Harris saying, and I don't know if this was like a campaign promise or something they're actually doing, saying, oh, we're going to send $750 to the people
Black Hawk
affected.
helicopters.
And it's like,
I have a Chinook going right over my head.
Jim Keith is going to rise up out of his grave. Like, did someone say black helicopters?
Yeah, plenty of those too. Sorry. Anyway, sorry, Coot, go ahead.
No, anyway, that was, I mean, that to me was just like, that's a massive middle finger. And it's like, you could say, okay, yeah, $750, that's better than nothing. But it's like, what's that going to do when your entire town is a pile of lumber? You know,
It's
it's like, what
not
that's,
even a middle finger. It's an intentional destruction. Like, it's intentional. It's like beyond. It's worse than the middle finger. And I have friends that are trying to file for that $750, and they can't get it. So that's just something they're advertising to try to save face. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, they don't care. That's the whole point. It's like, it's intentional, and they don't care. And, you know, it's not a surprise. Like, I'm forgive me, I forget the name of the place in Ohio that had that huge rail disaster that poisoned the entire area. And now,
what was it?
East Palestine, Ohio.
yeah, and you know, in Maui, and it's like they don't care. Like, it's intentional. It's not a middle finger. It's beyond that. Like, they have a deep-seated hatred towards the people in general. Like, the division between the elite ruling class and the people that live in these areas, like, there's just nothing but pure disdain for us. Like,
They will
so,
give a show of wanting to care about this when they allow film crews into the Biltmore to show the damage that the Biltmore has taken. Then we'll get some sympathy from, or some intentional show of sympathy. Right?
Well, I mean, even from like a local level. So, like, when, you know, after the hurricane hit, they'd have 2 press conferences, like one in the morning and one during the day. And the mayor of the city didn't even fucking attend any of them. Like, too busy doing other stuff rather than to, you know, talk to the city that she manages. And
Which is,
yeah,
sorry, Dan, that just popped in my head, which is why I mentioned to both, I believe, Coot and BLA is what I find interesting is why they're hyper focused on Asheville in particular. And it's exactly what you guys are kind of saying is, I think they're using Asheville when you have all of these other areas that are of concern, and they're using Asheville as a focal point, hyper focal point, because the first day that I got back on Twitter, it's like every post, right wing, left wing, whatever, echo chamber, everybody, Asheville, North Carolina, Asheville, and I was like, this is odd, you know. And I think that's exactly why, Dan, is because they know that Asheville will be sympathetic to however they are able to spin things with the local officials and this and that. And they know that they're going to be able to cooperate to a certain extent with whatever the ineptitude, quote unquote, would be. And, you know, all of that is going on. And the big media is hyper focused here, so that all these other areas are not the places that you're seeing. We'll not even call it coverage. It's just other people uploading about all of these other places, you know, like Black Mountains Want to Know. It's like most of the videos I'm seeing on Instagram, it's not particularly Asheville in town.
Yeah.
Although there is some of that, and reason, and rightfully so, because we did get hit hard in town. But it's all these other places that people are having to upload themselves, saying that they're going into with their own supplies, etc. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you the amount of contempt I feel from the local officials on every level dealing with us. And I'm personally having a hard time struggling, not holding it against them. You know, just at least as a Christian, I'm trying to have like a better perspective of things. And I'm trying not to point the finger and to villainize people, because, you know, we're kind of taught that it's the powers and principalities that we're at battle with. And so some of these people, these elected officials that are in charge, that should be doing a better job, like, in a weird sense, like, I pity them. You know, like, they don't get it, you know. And it's you know, it's been an enlightening experience to kind of go through this, and then, you know, thinking that the people that are in the position to help you are going to be responsible, and they're going to be serious, and they're going to try to help you the best they can. And it's not too big of a surprise to know that it's the exact opposite take that they're taking. They're doing more harm than they are good.
I had a quick question, Daniel. That I just wanted to ask about
Yeah.
I want to get BLA's take on all because he's a big fan of the federal government. But I wanted to ask because you mentioned being from the Bay, and I don't know if you've been to any disasters there. I know they get like hurricanes and earthquakes and things like, or not, excuse me, not earthquake, wildfires and earthquakes.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have any experience with those? And do you have any kind of comparison between, or just from knowing people there? Do you have any kind of comparison between the disaster response, what things were like in California as opposed to North Carolina?
Well, yeah, so the biggest disaster I was in California was the Loma Prieta earthquake in 1989. And so, that was bad, but, not really comparable to this. And then in terms of like the wildfires, like the only reason why the wildfires are such a disaster in California is because the state, Newsom, etc., have been taking all the funds away from the fire prevention programs. And so, the fires became a bigger deal, later in my stay in California. And that's more of a man-made disaster as opposed to like a disaster from the government, as opposed to what everything is always conveniently pinned on, which is climate change. This hurricane is climate change, the wildfires are climate change. And it's like, no, it's really government incompetency that's fueling these things. And then they're growing in scale, and they're growing in, the amount of them, because the government's getting more and more corrupt by the day. And so it's a convenient thing where they had this like, scapegoat where everything that they fuck up is due to climate change. So, there's no responsibility. And to BLA's point earlier about talking about Katrina, it's like, Katrina was bad. Obviously, it was a tragedy. But, there was a lot of people upset with the government response during that. And
Kanye West.
Yeah. And there was even accountability, right? Like people got fired. But when it comes to this, this situation, like no one's going to get fired. Like no one's going to take any responsibility for not preparing the city ahead of time for the poor response they had afterwards. And like, it's just one of the things growing up in California, being like a deep blue haven, is that the liberal global order, whatever, like you fail up. Like the more you fuck up, the higher the promotion you have, because the more there's blackmail and control over you. So like someone like, Gavin Newsom, for instance. So I worked in San Francisco when he was the mayor. And then, I would have to clean up like syringes and use condoms and all this stuff in front of the place that I worked before I even got into work. And then there's shit all over the streets everywhere. And so you would be like, okay, this guy's run a deficit in the city. He's completely ruined San Francisco. There's no way he's going to get a higher job. And it's exactly the opposite. It's like he's going to become the governor because of that. So like everyone fails up, like the more incompetent you are, the more the higher powers have the ability to control you. And that's all I see. And even here, I'm sure that's what I'm guessing is going to happen in Asheville. We have like a city coordinator who's having these emergency meetings that they're broadcasting, and they're talking about the school districts. And, people are asking them about, food, water. Have you talked to the mayor at all? No answer. Nothing. Like nothing to say on anything important that we actually need to know. It's just like, oh, well, this school's going to be closed. And, so sorry, I get super fucking triggered. So the lady came on, they're talking about the disaster and what can be done. And the city manager's like, oh, well, we had this like mobile cell tower that we're going to put downtown, and it's going to have like a 2-block radius so people can use the cell phones. And I'm like, obviously that's not sufficient. That's not enough. Like, I've seen more of those mobile hotspot cell phone towers at concerts than I have in this disaster zone, right? And then afterwards, they're asking people to fucking email donations to the city. I'm like, lady, no one has access to cell service. How the hell are they going to be emailing you about anything? It's such a disaster, like all the way. Like, as as much disdain as we have for our federal government, it's the same with our state government and at least the local Asheville government. It's all incompetent. And at the end of the day, they just don't fucking care. They don't care. They're more concerned about their own ass, what they have, their promotions, how they look, and there's no incentive in the system for them to care about any of us. Sorry. I apologize.
No, it's interesting that the one thing that is different, especially in context from this versus something like Katrina. The major difference is that that's a different era. That was post Big Nine era, and this is post Karanka era. And the major difference is that everything you just said can be completely wiped away by putting the label of, well, that's DISINFO, right?
Yeah.
So the social media aspect of this and the mass communication, which is thrown in your face, just like you said. It's like when boomers send you an email, like they do a reply all when it was supposed to be to you. And then they say, just hit the link below and then you can get your insurance or whatever. And there's no link. Right. And then there's a follow-up email of, oh, we forgot the link. And then there's a misspelling in the subject line. And then there's still no link. And then the third email says it. But it's all, this is like you take boomer supremacy and lock it into the program of, well, we have to make sure that the biggest, it's like Norm Macdonald said, well, the biggest problem is the hypocrisy, right? That's what we're really concerned with, right? When it's actually, no, it's the landslides and the flooding and the no water and the no food and the people that are still under the mud and the city infrastructure and all of that stuff, right? No, but it's the hypocrisy that's the problem. And I think that, part of this also is that the thing with, I keep comparing it to Katrina because, as far as natural, we just had the Hawaii thing. That's probably the closest thing to compare it to, right? Is the Hawaii event with the DEWs or whatever that was. And there are natural disasters. God works through God's providence is powerful. And I know that in I forgot that, like, I was just reading about the 1916 hurricane in Asheville, right? With the landslides and the rivers of mud. And it was very similar, but that's obviously pre-electricity, total globalist America.
Well, wait a minute, Bill. They had electricity at the Billmore House, around that time. So you're not completely correct about Asheville.
Well, of course the Vanderbilts had electricity. They had electricity in the year 1200. Are you kidding? Dear sir. Right. No, but so in other words, the things do happen, but it's very weird that it's all focused in a place called Asheville. So we're going to make it into ash. We're going to turn everything into ash and mine the lithium. And also that it's directed at a population that is the exact opposite of Katrina, right? So one of the reasons that Katrina got so much coverage is, number one, it's in a bowl and it's already underwater with New Orleans. And there's a whole coastline that's going to be destroyed and all this stuff. And we're going to destroy the thing happens to destroy all of this, real estate that we can develop, or whatever happened in Australia with the DEWs, right? And the wildfires and all that stuff. But this is at a mountain town that seems to be completely isolated from something like a stupid hurricane that is already gone up all the way through the coast. It's just very strange. With a population that is not one that is bent to complaining or to being even in the media at all. So of course it just seems, if it were directed in any way, or even if the outcome is directed, at the program of in this program of just nothingness, and hating the citizenry, then it seems like an apt place for this. It's just crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like, growing up being like a, libtard from California, like there's just a natural disdain for this region from the whole country. Like Appalachians are stupid, like they're dumb white hill folk, whatever. And it's like, I think part of the reason is because people here are so resilient and they're so resistant to the globalist bullshit, where they're just on their farms doing their thing. They're not power seeking people, and they don't need the government. That's the whole thing. It's that this region, it's a lot of the aid and support is coming from other residents. It's we're not asking for the government necessarily for help. It's inverted. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, a lot of people, particularly out there, they're not mean per se, etc., in their temperament, but they do want to be left alone as far as all this is concerned. So that's been the double-edged sword, is that they are out on their own, and relying on more of them to come in, more of the same type of people to come in and get them out of here. So that's been the little bit of irony out there.
It's also crazy because one of the things I realized yesterday, just driving around with the damn speed camera in town. There's a point to this. It is that you drive through a speed, there's a speed zone in a school zone on a weekend with no lights flashing, but it's still active. And the point is that it made me think of Asheville in a weird way, because it just goes to show you that nobody's safe. Nothing is exempt from this. That Drone World book that I read kind of exemplifies this, that in the base world, which is now Drone World, which is full spectrum dominance, there's literally nowhere on Earth, there's nowhere where you are safe from this sort of event or this sort of thing happening. That people think that they can get away and homestead somewhere or wherever, if that's the case. But there's always something targeting you. There's always some sort of way that your whole way of life can just be completely wiped out, which I hope is not the case. I hope that their way of life is not wiped out, but right, Jethro and Daniel, but it, for now, it seems to be the case. So
yeah, I think I appreciate the Daniel getting into it's not, because I think there's a tendency for people to focus on the federal government, because most people don't even know what their local government is doing on a day-to-day basis. This is kind of an old thing people have been saying forever, is that what happens in your city council, it will probably affect you a lot more than what's happening in DC. But a lot of people know what's going on in DC. Most people don't know what's going on with their city
politics
council.
is local.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that it's, I think it's good things can come out of bad situations. And like I was saying earlier about, people kind of coming together and having that sense of community, it's unfortunate that it has to come out of these sort of situations. But if this can potentially, and I don't know if other people you're talking to are feeling the same way, but if people are realizing, oh, hey, like these people in the local and in some cases state government, if these people are just as bad, if not worse, than in their response than the federal government, then if that makes people pay attention to what's happening in their neighborhoods and in their cities and their counties more, I think that can be potentially a bright spot in a really really sad situation.
Did you see Biden's response to this, by the way? With the choppers? They said, what do you, because he had just apparently done a tour or done a looked at it on a screen. They said, what about the disaster zone? He said, what disaster zone? What storm? Oh, that storm. He said, he said, everyone's very happy.
Yeah.
Everyone's very happy down there.
I heard him say, they got everything they need in Nashville.
They got everything they need.
Tennessee.
Listen here.
Where am I?
Listen, Jack. They got everything they need. They got everything they need.
Well, I will say to Coot's point, I'm really hoping that, like we talked about, this area is very, very blue. But I think a lot of people are going to wake up when they realize that all of their money that came to try, all the money that was here to help us went to Israel and to Ukraine. I think that's going to turn a lot of those blue voters red.
Oh, Lindsey Graham's going to call in now. Dan, you're gonna rile him up, man.
Listen now, here's what I think we need to do now. We need to drop some love bombs on those people. Give them some money. Drop little love missiles.
Did you guys see that clip of him?
Mm-hmm.
On
I know the one
Hannity
you're
the other
talking
night?
about.
Yeah, he's like, I just saw the tail end of it, and he's on with Hannity.
Asheville's a real sexy town. That's what I know. It's real sexy.
Oh, you can bet he's been to the Biltmore dungeon up here and all that kind of stuff. We'll just say that you can put your money.
He's been in the Vanderbilt pool at the Biltmore. Okay.
Yes, he's definitely been just look it up, folks. It's in the emails with hot dogs and but anyway, yeah, Andy's like, he's talking about the whole situation, and but I think Trump and he said something like they're trying to help it, and Graham's like, well, I haven't been sleeping, and a lot of people in South Carolina ain't sleeping. But what about Israel? And I was like, you have got to be kidding me, dude. Like, we need to move. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, I was just like, anyway, I didn't know if you guys.
I haven't been sleeping, but that's for another reason, for another story. So I got to go, Hannity. I got a drum circle I got to go to. Bye, y'all.
And they keep showing Buttigieg for some reason. Have you seen that? Like he's been plastered all over saying, okay, wrong choice of why I shouldn't have said that word, but he's like,
he's been plastered.
Yeah. Okay. He's been, he's like, well, we need to do that. We're working as hard as we can to send stuff down that way. And people are like, dude, how are you going to get here down through, it's like, how are you going to send your National Guard or whatever else? And it's like, I'm curious why they keep showing him.
He's like, don't they have bicycles down there? And by the way,
yeah, exactly.
No, I don't want to shift away from this, but as we've been talking about, the focus has largely been on Asheville, and yes, obviously things are bad there, but it's interesting because it was the same thing like with Katrina. Is even though I've never been to Louisiana or Mississippi, but to hear people tell it. Mississippi got hit way worse than New Orleans did, but all the focus was on them. So one of the things I did, I'd mentioned this, is I started seeing, so Tennessee also got hit because there were other places. Florida got hit bad, Georgia got hit, parts of South Carolina got hit pretty bad as well. And Tennessee, there was a story that came out of Tennessee about this place called Impact Plastics in Erwin, Tennessee. And I was trying to gather, I had stuff kind of scattered around, and I was working on getting it together before the stream. But basically what happened is I started seeing reports come out, mostly screenshots coming off of, from different social media accounts of people saying that the employees of this plastics plant called Impact were told that while the hurricane was coming in, they were told you have to go to work or you're going to lose your jobs. And so, people didn't want to lose their jobs, obviously. And so they went to work, and then they got hit with a flood, and were some of the people, let me see if I can find the story I was just reading on this. So there was 6 people, 6 Impact Plastics employees who were swept away by Helene as the deadly storm marched across the southeast. 3 of those employees are still missing, and 3 are dead. All had clung to the back of a flatbed semi-truck in the business parking lot as the waters rose. And anyway, it's kind of a depressing story. I don't want to bum everybody out, but I think that this goes to show. And you can bet. Of course, the CEO of this company, he wasn't at the plant when they got hit. I think it's just another example. And I don't know what the workers were making there. I could probably hazard a guess. It's not a whole lot. And having that. People on a lower income level, being told, like, they don't want to lose their jobs. They probably didn't know how bad the storm was actually going to be. And they're getting told, you're going to get fired if you don't show up to work. And then, the company, I think, came out and said, they were like, oh, well, they had plenty of time we give them plenty of time to evacuate. But, the fact that 6 people got killed, or, well, 3 got killed in the flood, and the other 3 we can pretty well assume, conclude what happened to them is, I mean, it's of course, because the executives weren't there, and it's a callous indifference to human life that it goes beyond just the government, and is that there's a certain, and not everybody who's at a certain socioeconomic level is like this, but there's this sort of disdain for the workers, and that, well, we have to keep line going up, and it doesn't matter if people die in a flood, as long as we can keep production going as long as we possibly can. And to me, that was one of the, I don't know if y'all followed this story at all, but that to me was one of the, I try not to get angry about things I read online, but it's like, this is a real thing. Like, these are real humans who got killed in a disaster that, I mean, disaster couldn't have been avoided, but this loss of life could have been avoided. So I don't know. That was just one of those things.
The stage was set
just
for that with
infuriating.
Karanka, for sure. With everybody, with essential workers, and and all that stuff. The stage was definitely solidified, not set, but it was solidified with that. And you're right about the callousness to human lives. Yeah, OFL right there says so many people do not value other people's lives. It's frightening. I think that part of that is that people, especially in positions of power within the MIC corporate government structure, especially, who are purposely out of touch with human beings on a regular basis, are especially callous at the highest and the in terms of society strata, at the highest and the lowest tend to be, well, I guess at every level can be completely callous to the plight of everyday people, especially when it comes to bad things happening. And you see this where the response, it's great that we have a response where people are brought together and where people want to help each other, but leading up to that moment, where the bad thing actually does happen, because people in any situation, I talk about this all the time in terms of the books and movies that I cover, that people all the time get themselves in trouble just on a daily basis, as Sam Hyde says, find themselves in trouble because they don't want to trust their gut when like when the lady is walking down the street and then there's a group of people walking towards them, and instead of crossing the street, and trusting her gut, and then the bad thing happens. People just don't want to trust their gut or listen to common sense. But also, it's like, who would think that this would happen? Who would think that it would be this bad? So luckily, thankfully, thank God that the response is where people are brought together, but there's still going to be people that are separated, as Daniel was talking about, from doing anything, and are just in total self-preservation mode. That's where you see really the best of humanity, is people who are willing to serve others and to help others it's in disaster situations.
Well, part of kind of what you were saying on the tail end of that, BLA, and what Daniel was saying earlier is, supposedly what the ineptitude, I can guarantee you that however inept or however much disdain they do have for everybody here in town, at least city council, you name it, I can assure you that they were, I'm not excusing them by any means, but I can guarantee you they were not thinking that this would probably be anything like it ended up being. I'll guarantee you that, because that's because it's never been at this level, anything like we've been talking about the entire time. So I'm sure that to some degree they're a little bit befuddled, or whatever the term you want to use, but that's why I'm thinking that why they are hyper focused on here. They knew it would be a perfect place to spend all kinds of webs, narratives, etc. I mean, it is the perfect place to do that. I'll say that, you know what I mean? And as far as the mayor goes and all that, I mean, I'm just thinking if it happened 20 years ago, yeah, it would have been the same situation, basically.
Well, if I may, so when it comes, this will make sense. I hope it makes sense. But when it comes to worldview, I think people have this illusion that people have their worldview as, oh, this is good versus bad, or right versus wrong, good versus evil. But really, the thing that has the most explanatory power to me is us versus them. That's the worldview, and that's the worldview that's growing. So when it comes to the incompetency from the government, it's us, the government, and you, the people. And if you're not a part of the government, there's no incentive for us to care about you. And that scales down from, all the way to the top to the bottom with people, where it's in versus out group, polarization and tribalistic thinking. And if you can understand and wrap your brain around that and apply that to these situations and the outcomes tend to make a lot more sense. At least to me.
Yeah, it's like in the movie this summer, right? I'm an American. Yeah, but what kind of American are you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or, working at the plastics place in Tennessee. It's like, okay, well, I'm the owner. I tell you what to do. You're not me. You're the workers. You're the other. So my incentive isn't to look after your best interest. I'm looking after my best interest. Group versus group dynamic. Scaling to everywhere with this situation when it comes to our local government versus the people, the national government versus the people, Democrats versus, whatever, like any dialectic, it's, polarization and dialectics. And if you're, people, I think, are really caught up in that way of viewing the world. And I think we're trained through media and, just, modernity right now to kind of view things that way. I don't know. I thought I'd add that in there.
Yeah. All right, I got to run, fellas. Hey, listen, Daniel, Jethro, everybody out there in Asheville, stay safe and God bless. Hope everything goes well. Love you guys. Hey, Maddie, thanks for having me. And we're gonna keep living. Got to keep living. LIVIN. So peace, y'all. Thanks for having me.
All right. Much love, BLA. Thanks for coming
Peace
on.
out, BLA.
Yeah. One other thing I did want to mention as we were talking about people kind of coming together and I think one of the interesting things that kind of happened around this. Actually, before that, I forgot to do this earlier. I'm going to do this at the top of the show. Wanted to give a huge shout out. He was in the chat earlier. I'm not sure if he's still here or not. Massive shout out to the real John Connor. Friend of the show. Thank you, John Connor. He sent, did he send two? I think he sent, was it two? It was one or two donations. Let's see. He sent 2 donations. So thank you so much, John Connor. Appreciate that. And we'll see about passing those along. We can discuss that later. But anyway.
Did John send them from the future? Or... I don't know. I'm just curious what he said in them. Then we can judge. You know what I mean? John Connor.
Nicely done. But one of the things that was kind of interesting that happened around the same, around this event is the longshoremen in the South, which I think went everywhere. I had the list of all the ports. I mean, it was everywhere from Houston up to Massachusetts, basically the entire East Coast into the Gulf. Is the longshoremen were going, they declared a strike, which, I mean, I don't know the entire details, the ins and outs of it. From what I saw, I was, in support of it in the sense that, I mean, one of the reasons they were striking was wages. And then another big one was automation. And is that, they don't want to see their jobs get taken, by automation. And so I was like, okay, that, cause that's an important thing. I mean, that's been a big, I think some of that is overblown, but I mean, something like that those people could be automated out of a job. And so, I mean, the strike, I think, lasted 3 days, and then they agreed to end the strike. I think they extended their contract through the current contract through January. to kind of, and I'm not, and look, I don't know the detail. I didn't mean to say that this is some kind of like, oh, people are doing this to help others. I don't know all the details about, the negotiations and everything, but it was just interesting timing in that as soon as this happens and the entire eastern seaboard, where they're going to need supplies, because it was like I was saying, I've been hearing in like North and South parts of North and South Carolina, maybe other places as well. People have been loading up their cars, trucks, vans, whatever. And I think KF was saying earlier that some people in the Raleigh area had like taken a 20-foot truck of donations up there. And, that would, when people are already getting absolutely hammered by, the astronomical cost of consumer goods. And then, if you don't have anybody to bring that stuff in, then if it's, perishable kind of items, then it's going to rot and there's nothing you can do with it. So there's all these kinds of issues that come along with it. And I thought about this because Real John Connor had messaged me the other day and asking about this. And so I was kind of giving him some of my analysis and kind of my take on it. And I was thinking that this could be something, thankfully, the situation seems, like I said, I think the strike lasted, all of but 3 days, but it was like, this could potentially be a much bigger issue, to where, if you can't get supplies in, then, that could, it effectively cripple the East Coast, particularly the Southeast. So, anyway, that was another thing that kind of been in the news, but I was very glad to see that, if we can keep the flow of things going. So I don't know. I just thought it was interesting timing of why they would choose now to do it, right around a major hurricane that is hit an area on the, rough, basically for all intents and purposes on the East Coast.
Yeah, it's so you say it lasted 3 days?
I think it was 3 days.
Yeah.
Interesting. I had heard different things, and something about their salaries, at least in their negotiations, at least recent negotiations, just weren't going to be anything reasonable. And so to a degree, I was like, well, I don't know that I can blame them. I don't know how long they would sign contracts for, or how long the duration would be. But anyway, I was hearing that supposedly their proposed salary increases were going to be negligible, at least definitely over, like, say, a 5-year period. Inflation would definitely be catching up with them to bear. Eventually, it would just kind of be no increase, essentially, effectively. Right. So, yeah, I was kind of watching that for a bit, but I hadn't seen a lot of things recently. But that's interesting. Only 3 days, so makes you wonder why. Just like Elon, we haven't really brought up Mr. Musk a little bit, but
yeah.
That was this might be a nice little way to a little avenue off of that.
Oh, real quick, I didn't want to interrupt. I looked this up because I had it pulled up. The reason why they did it is because the strike, it started at midnight on October 1st because the contract had expired. So okay, I guess I missed an important detail. It wasn't just, we're just going to strike. Okay, so anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that I guess that's what kicked it off, and it was just kind of bad timing with the hurricane. So anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear you guys, because I was thinking I had heard this guy. I forget his name. I think it's Ryan something. Anyway, he has some kind of small organization. I forget the name of it, but he called in, I think, Friday night when we were listening to the radio station, and he's like, hey, I just want to say that I want to link up with you guys, and all the local places that are doing X, Y, and Z, and like, well, we're gonna get you a number off air, et cetera. And then he's like, okay, and I was like, interesting. He was saying, we have all these Starlinks coming in, they're paid for, and da-da-da. And it's like, oh, okay. And of course, the first thing that pops into my mind is the similar, I forget the number, but I'm sure you guys remember about a year ago in Ukraine. Can we say that word on here?
Yeah,
all
you're good.
all of the things happening in Ukraine, and of course, there's this huge story about Musk sending I don't know how many Starlinks in there, and they had the big story. Oh, of course, the Russians are interfering with blah blah blah. You know what I mean? So, and then I can't remember what the Maui situation was. There something about Starlink going into Maui? Do you guys remember?
Vaguely, I don't remember the details though.
Yeah, I'm
Do
sure.
you know anything about that, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I don't specifically remember anything, but it's I think inevitable. Like Elon Musk with the Starlink thing kind of takes that power out of the government's hand and puts it in the hand of a corporation, Elon. And so, I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a better service. It's a lot cheaper, and it's non-government reliant. So I think the people in positions of power care about power. The way that they maintain their power is control. And so if they can't control it, they don't have the power over it. And so someone like Elon comes in and says, hey, I'm going to offer some help. And, they're going to just completely do everything they can to villainize him. Not to say that he's an angel or that he's like a good actor at all. But, he would have been able to help out this area a lot. And I know that the government's actively trying to prevent him from giving us Starlink to get our internet back. Meanwhile, they're not doing anything to get our internet back at all by themselves. So, I mean.
Well, yeah, he was. I was just bringing up Maui because I didn't remember as far as what was happening with that in there. Because yeah, he said that this gentleman that called into the radio station said, "Yeah, we've got like 500 Starlinks. They're paid for. They're loaded on the plane. We're next door," and I forget where he was at, but he was at an airport. Eventually, I saw his post on Twitter. I'm calling it Twitter. I'm not calling it X. But anyway, he's like, "Yeah, we're next door, and it'll take us however long, and we're ready to fly them in right now, and they're prepaid, and blah blah blah, and they're free for 30 days, and all this stuff." You know what I mean? And so anyway, that was the first thing that popped into my mind was the whole Ukraine situation. I immediately just thought of that story. And I'm like, interesting. And then all the other stuff where we're coming in on the other peripheral with the lithium situation, the quartz and all this. And like, I think I'm starting to see the picture a little bit more clearly kind of what's going on because, of course, Starlink, I was just reading that, of course, they're highly in with the Pentagon, and they have some contracts going through, I think, like 2029, something like that, to develop something with Starlink, which is Star Shield, I think they're calling it, to prevent hacking situations, et cetera, for Starlink and all this. So, like Dansky was saying, it's like I take a more skeptical view of Mr. Musk, and it seems like all of his situations where he's able to quote offer aid in certain situations always seems to benefit him, much like Mr. Gil Bates, Mr. Get the Numbers Down. It just so happens that everything that he's using for his aid situation has always happened to benefit him in the end. And at least in the long run. So that was the very first thing I thought. I'm like, well, we're getting married and we're getting Ukraine right now. And I saw the video. Well, yep, that's making a lot of sense because, and especially with people are trying to get evicted or get thrown off their land or whatever, that would make a lot of sense because, I mean, the places most people are posting their videos are right in those areas around Spruce Pine, which is the lithium mine, et cetera. It's just west of that. Maybe half an hour or so. It's all these places.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, if the people out there have watched this show, I'm no fan of Elon Musk. I mean, I think he's an interesting figure in that he at least pays lip service to the idea of being anti-establishment. He is not. I mean, he is firmly within the establishment. I mean, this is like many say is the richest man on earth. Okay, like you don't have, you don't get that.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, I think he's kind of a shady character. I think he's this is my opinion. Okay. I'm not making a criminal accusation here. I think the guy's a fraud because he's like, oh, people are like, oh, this guy's so smart. He's just working all the time. He's running like 6 companies. It's like, dude, this guy sits around and posts like Reddit from 2013 content on Twitter all day. And it's like I've quoted this on the show before, but it's like Max Thrax said on an episode of a now deleted episode of the Community Fitness Podcast. He said Elon Musk really went to Reddit.com and said this would make a great personality.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I mean that's basically. But anyway, I mean, I think that in those kind of cases, like a Starlink could be useful where. Yeah, like I said, there's no seems to be no rush on getting internet back up. And just one thing, I'll throw it back to y'all to wherever you want to go with this. But one thing that's interesting with the mining is if you look throughout history, and this is particularly, I'm very interested in labor history in the U.S. And if you can go back and look and see how it worked out for people in Eastern Kentucky, in in West Virginia, whenever the mines came in, you had these rich people who found these deposits. They came in and that they effectively, and the same thing in South Carolina with a lot of the textile mills, they basically enslaved these people. And they set these jobs up which paid more than anything else in the area, at least initially. And they built these towns up and completely destroyed the landscape, completely destroyed some of the most beautiful areas of the country. And then what happened? They went and like I know in South Carolina, at least, if you look at the more recent history there, you had these companies that they went and sold their everything. They sold out to companies in other countries and just left these towns with nothing. And so it's it's a similar thing in West Virginia and Eastern Kentucky is exactly. You can see that play out and see how, what happens. Because these companies, it's like rich people who come in, find these deposits, and they'll either, take the land for cheap by any means they can. And then, if they can find people to work, then, anyway, I don't get too into the weeds on this, on the history of it. But, it gets to the point where it's like you have to go to the company store and you buy everything from the company store. Amazon was trying to do this where they're like, oh, we're going to have residential areas around our facilities. And it's like, okay, see how this worked out in Appalachia with coal mining. So anyway, I don't want to get too, like I said, too into the weeds on that, but I don't know. But that's
the power and the control plus the us versus them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, it's been repeated throughout history. But, well, I'm going to have to peace out here. But I wanted to thank you, Maddie, for having me on. I wanted to thank Jethro and BLA for coming on. And I wanted to thank everyone who's reached out to me to ask me how I was doing. And everyone that's been praying for our area. I sincerely appreciate it. And if you could continue to keep us in your prayers, I would appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And I was very glad to hear back from you after the once I started hearing it. I didn't hear from you or Jethro for a couple of days, and I was like, oh man, I hope everything's okay, because once I started seeing it was probably about Friday afternoon, Friday evening when I really started seeing what it was, where things were standing up there. So yeah, very, very glad you're safe, and we will all continue to be praying for y'all. So have a good afternoon, and thanks again for being here.
Thank you very much.
All right, stay safe, Danny.
All right, thank you. You too, bud.
All right.
So what?
Well,
what do you think about all this?
One thing that popped in my head is, as far as the whole digital scheme of things, I can only kind of speak anecdotally, particularly for my area, kind of south of town, is that I know that for years and years and years, I think Verizon was probably one of the first big telecoms, I think that was in town. I know a lot of friends and family that got Verizon stock and et cetera. And then what's interesting is, particularly in our area, has always been bad for cell reception, especially, I mean, for a long time. And it's like, as soon as we get out of our particular area, whatever the mile radius, 2 mile radius, whatever, it's like, okay, it picks up. And that was one of the things I was kind of wondering is, I know some people who had AT&T, they didn't lose coverage at all throughout the entire thing. I believe the same thing for T-Mobile. And I'm not sure about the other, but Verizon, we were out. Everybody was out for at least Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and I want to say through Tuesday, basically. At least I remember getting mine back sometime Tuesday. And I was like, well, it's starting to come on. It came back on a little bit. Oh, U.S. Cellular, like my folks have used, and they got theirs back like Sunday morning. So anyway, I thought, well, this is very odd. And then they were saying, oh, well, Verizon was the number one telecom throughout the area that got hit the worst. So we're being told anyway. And they said, however many number of the cell towers, et cetera, were just completely either wiped out or having to be rebuilt from scratch, you name it. I was like, well, that's interesting. And so I noticed an area I'm in is not anywhere near 5G. It hasn't been for 2 or 3 years, how long it's supposedly been available, right? So I'm stuck on like hardly any LTE or 4G once it comes back. And I noticed people just walking around in the neighborhood and they're on their phones. I guess they're, depending on where they are in the subdivision or whatever, their houses, maybe they're not getting good cell reception or whatever. So they're just walking around. Okay, I'll walk around. Literally, I walk uphill about 20 feet and I have full service 5G. I'm sorry, I've been saying I'll try to avoid that, Coot. My apologies.
Oh, you're good. I'm not worried about the algorithm as long as it's no, like, you know, if this doesn't get picked up on the front page of YouTube, I'm not worried about it.
Right. And yeah, so literally I walk up maybe, I don't know, 50 feet at the most, and it's full service 5G from kind of where I'm at. You know what I mean? And I was like, wow. So now all of a sudden there's complete 5G just all over this place. And if anybody knows, I know a little bit about how the cell towers, like prior to 5G, you had your 2G, your 3G, your LTE and all that. They worked on cell towers that were certainly bigger as far as in length. And they are able to reach longer distances, much longer distances than 5G is capable to. So, in other words, so they're having to place 5G towers so far apart from each other in much closer proximity, and 5G is less distance, but it's heavily penetrable. It just it comes out like in bursts, you know, in flashes. And if people will remember, like in the Dark Knight, it's useful for, certainly it's basically a military technology, as we're being told. That's basically, you know, what Bale did in the Dark Knight when he had used his the ending in that film when he's looking at all the screens, at all the sonar, etc., and all the things he's watching on all the screens. You know what I mean? So anyway, that was the very first thing that popped in my head. I'm like, well, isn't that interesting that now all of a sudden, as they're getting things back up and working, I'm sure they're going to have all these Verizon towers that are in this area that I'm sure that, depending on, I'm sure a lot of people near me probably wouldn't be happy about 5G being in their neighborhoods or close to their neighborhoods. Is now all of a sudden, I will bet you that it's just going to be all over the place now. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I thought that was another thing that popped right in my head is the Starlink and that on the digital side of things. And then to piggyback off of that is I know that I this has been years ago now, but all of the talk, the smart cities talk, we haven't really talked about that too much, but I do not believe Asheville was in the running for that at the time. It hadn't been for, since they've been discussing it. They've been kind of bantering about it. I've paid attention to it somewhat, and they've discussed it at city council meetings, and maybe we could do this, and maybe we could do that. And as far as I know, now Asheville is, somebody had posted that. I didn't see it, but on the Gov website, it's like all these things that have kind of been on the sideline are now all of a sudden going to be approved and coming in. And you can bet when they're rebuilding their infrastructure downtown, et cetera, it's going to be built exactly in the green scheme of things, of course. And you can bet that all the telecoms, you name it, they're just going to be moving right on in. And all of these places that they're going to have trouble, like, for instance, even Tiger Woods, there's a name that, you don't hear very often anymore. He wanted to build his first golf course here, I want to say about 10 years ago or so. And it was around this area. I forget which area it was exactly, but I was thinking it was north of town somewhere. And I mean, they threw a huge stink and would not let him come in at all to, do anything. And this is prior to his scandals, and all that. So, people around here are very, they won't, at least the people I know, I can speak to people that I know personally, they aren't too keen on letting people come in at all to do any of that type of stuff. So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm kind of scatterbrained, so I'm all over the place. But anyway, I didn't know where you wanted to go with that, Coop, but that was the next thing that kind of popped in my head.
No, yeah, you're good. I think that, that's definitely interesting. And I think that, I've seen similar kind of things. I have a relative that used to live in Alabama, has since moved to a different state, and it was a small town in Alabama, kind of tight knit community. They have downtown with local businesses and things like that, and Walmart was trying to move in, and they fought tooth and nail and were successful in keeping Walmart out. And I think that, in a lot of areas where it, and it's not, you can go to, there's all places all over the South, small towns, or if you drive through the South, you can go and there may be like one, and like, I don't eat fast food. So I just noticed this when I'm driving through. I don't like going to these places, but you might see like one local restaurant, and then everything else, it's like Bojangles, Dairy Queen, Checkers, like, whatever. Checkers haven't been around for like 30 years or 20 years, but you know what I mean? It's just like all these chain kind of restaurants. And that's so anyway, I'm just saying it's not like every southern town has no like major corporate kind of presence there. But my point is that there are places, and even if they have a mix of that, there are places where people do still fight against that kind of thing, where it's like, you don't want a Tiger Woods golf course, in your backyard. Maybe you don't want a Walmart. You don't want whatever it is. But then you see, as we were talking about earlier, where all of a sudden it's like in these disasters, there's like a blitz of people, and I'm not saying that Helene was planned or something. I have no idea. But what I am saying is, or like the Maui fires or anything like that. But what I do think is interesting is how fast people move on those kinds of things. It's like before. I don't even know if the wildfires were even completely out yet in Maui, and then all of a sudden, I don't like Oprah and Mark Zuckerberg or whoever is trying to buy up people's land. And the same thing where it's like, these entire towns are piles of lumber, and we're going to come in, we're going to give you the value. What was it prior to what it would have been worth after we found these lithium and quartz deposits. So it seems it's like how can people move on something like that quickly? Because then it's like people, they're not thinking about, oh yeah, let's keep these things out. It's like, maybe like, oh, my house is gone, my family members are missing, like whatever it may be. And it's a real, I mean, there's that angle, and I mean, on top of that, it's just despicable kind of behavior. And it whether, again, I'm not saying it's intentional, I have no idea, but it's either way, like it's a pretty blatant land grab, which I think is in the, I mean, any land grab is despicable, but in the wake of a situation as bad as this, it's almost incomprehensible that's like top of mind of, we have to go buy up all this land so we can put mining towns and golf courses and 5G towers and cameras that track you, and scales and digital, like smart scales in the wastewater treatment to track what people are eating or whatever. Like it's totally insane, but it's like that's here opportunity. Anyway, I don't know. That's kind of my initial reaction to that.
Don't never let a good crisis go to waste. I think I've heard that before, Coot. I don't know. I think that sums it up right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's. I think that's exactly what you're saying. I have yet to formulate opinion on if, and I'm certainly not going to say on YouTube what I kind of think about if certain things were directed or manipulated. I've seen some of the things on Twitter, and none of it would surprise me. I'll say that. And I sent you the story, of course, with the 40 trillion gallons that has supposedly been dumped throughout the Southeast in the past week. And I was wondering what you kind of thought about that. I found that a little hard to believe. And first of all, I'm wondering how can they measure that? Do you know any details about this particular thing?
Yes, I was trying to get all those stories. I just didn't have time to get them all. I'll post these in the description after the show if you want to go look at some of the things we've been talking about. But yeah, I got it pulled up on my phone here. Yeah, I mean, just when I saw the headline and was looking at it earlier, I was like, this seems, I don't know. How do you measure that? Because it says more than, this is from the AP, more than 40 trillion gallons of rain drenched the Southeast U.S. in the last week from Hurricane Helene and a run-of-the-mill rainstorm that sloshed in ahead of it. Okay, so that's what you were talking about, the storm before it. And an unheard-of amount of water that has stunned experts. That's enough to fill the Dallas Cowboys Stadium 51,000 times or Lake Tahoe just once. If it was concentrated just on the state of North Carolina, that much water would be 3.5 feet deep. That's it?
Yeah.
It's enough to fill more than 60 million Olympic-sized swimming pool. Wait, are they saying if they spread it out? Okay, maybe they mean if they spread it out over North Carolina, it would, the entire state, it would be
right
3.5 feet deep. Okay. But again, yeah, I mean, this seems like one of those articles that it's almost like it's kind of like a Bill Nye type of thing. Like, oh, look at this cool science fact. I mean, it's presented as like, look at this neat thing where we did all these calculations on, what this amount of water would be. And again, it's like, how could you possibly know that? I mean, it's not like they have, a rain gauge in the entire state that they can accurately measure 40 trillion gallons of rainwater.
Yeah, seems kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say absurd, but I guess it's possible. But yeah, Bill Nye, that's the perfect. He said, millions and millions of years ago, this happened. Okay. Oh, whatever you say.
Oh man, sorry. There's some child screaming outside my window. Hopefully that's not picking up. Well, I did want to just talk about some of these articles you sent real quick. Again, I have them on my phone, so I can't show them on screen. But there was one from the Daily Fail. I don't remember who started calling the Daily Mail the Daily Fail. I thought it was hilarious, but the headline is "Tiny Backwater Town," and that's kind of insulting. But these
Yeah. Oh,
people.
there you go. A
Yeah, I
perfect
mean,
example.
yeah. Oh no. Sorry, I went to the next article. Yeah, a town in North Carolina will help fuel the world's AI revolution with enough quartz to power entire, get this, $530 billion semiconductor global industry. I'm just going to read a little bit of this here if you'll. Sibelco, who comes up with these company names, by the way, is investing $700 million to expand 2 high-purity quartz mines in North Carolina. The 2 mines have increased quartz production by 58% since 2019. So high-purity quartz is a vital component of building semiconductor chips, which helps AI-powered software to process large amounts of data quickly and accurately, and is used in cell phones, laptops, and other electronic devices. So this is spruce pine. I think, did you mention spruce pine earlier?
Yeah, it's kind of just a little west of Charlotte. But that's apparently, I wasn't sure how much spruce pine was affected by all this as well, but apparently they did get some damage. And so anyway, but all of the disparate areas, a lot of the disparate areas around town that people are posting about, it's going right into, if you were going east, you'd be heading right into spruce pine before you hit Charlotte, etc.
Okay. Real John Connor says in the chat, same amount of water as drool I have when I pack a lip. Nice one. Yeah, it says that this is a town, the population of Spruce Pine is 2,200 people, down from 2,700 in 2018. The town has seen a drop in revenue as the number of tourists visiting the area has slowly depleted, causing some major retailers and restaurants to shutter their doors. So, oh no, what happened? I just lost the article. Something just had the Daily Fail messed up on me. But anyway, yeah, you can see where this mining, and then there's the article about another company that is Charlotte-based Albemarle builds an integrated lithium business in North Carolina to power the world. Now, isn't that interesting? In North Carolina, where, yeah, like you said, there's talks of turning Asheville into a total surveillance state. Smart city, runs on AI, semiconductor chips, that are necessary for that. And of course, it's right there in North Carolina. So there's a lot of that here. Like I said, I'll post all these post some of these links in the afterwards. But is it? I mean, I will admit, I knew they were, like, I'd heard of some mines in the Carolinas of different types. I didn't really know much about it. I didn't know about this quartz mine. I think the thing about the lithium mine in the Asheville area just came out. Were you aware of any of this, or was this news to you whenever this just sort of kind of coming out around the hurricane?
It seemed like I had known about that in spruce pine, but it's people are assuming that they've just discovered, and certainly you're just reading the article. They were using it for a certain period of time way back, I guess 50s, 60s era, and then all the usual reasons, environmental concerns, you name it, is shut down, and then so now. It's very interesting that I guess within the past year, at least all the stories that I could find, it was in the past year or so, are dealing with, like we've been talking about, is they're planning on reopening. And all of the big names that we've discussed are moving in again. So, and then aside from the Daily Fail, put F in the chat for Daily Fail, by the way. We
I'm going to put one right now.
is that I saw a story earlier from, I think it was in April, something that, of course, Tesla was interested. And once, we bring up Tesla, well, we go back to our Lord and Savior, Mr. Brand New Hero, Elon Musk is back in the picture again. Very interesting with Tesla and with electric and all that. Everybody knows where I'm going with that, of course. So I don't know if I sent that one, but I saw that was mid-April. I forget the source, but
let me see if I can find that one.
It seems, kind of piggybacking on what you were saying earlier, just a lot of coincidences to where they have an Overton window, to steal a phrase from Glenn Beck, who was here, by the way. He was here the other day. So I was like, I hope I don't run into him. But anyway, I was like, you remember when he was saying that all the time? The Overton window, the Overton window.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, it just seems like it's a perfect opportunity for this Overton window, for particularly in this area. You know what I'm saying? That all of this is kind of coalescing together. I'll just say that I'll say, hey, allegedly, this is my personal opinion. Anyway, I don't want to get you in trouble here, Coot. So anyway, sorry, could you hear there were a bunch of people around me?
Oh, yeah, no big deal.
Okay.
Do you remember, this is totally off topic, and just a quick side note, do you remember there's this video, I can't find it, I should have saved it, I can't find it now, but I've looked for it. There was this great video from back probably around 2016 when Glenn Beck is like in this conference room with a bunch of people sitting around a table, and he's standing up and he's got this like schizo whole like whiteboard diagram thing, and it was basically, this was like in the heyday of the alt-right, and his whole thing was because Richard Spencer was married to a woman that translated one of Dugin's books, and it had this whole schizo like red line thing that basically came out to like Dugin is secretly running Russia, and like he's running the alt-right, and I was like, dude, it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen, and I can't, if anybody has that video, please send it to me. Because it was so funny, and I haven't been able to find it.
Yeah, he had all the pictures up there, and remember he had a line coming from Dugan out to JD. Jay Dyer was up there and all that stuff. Yeah. I just remember when Jay mocked him, and I just laughed so hard when he was talking about. I think it's when he did his what's Dugan's fourth political theory book.
Yeah.
And he just like goes off on the back, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is great!" It's like I needed this laugh today. But yeah, he was here for like a day or so, and so he was jumping in on the whole FEMA situation. And I think I sent some of those clips, and he's discussing this. Well, they siphoned off our food that was coming in and segregated it, and you can't do this and you can't fly in here. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, I don't really want to say one way or another. I think most of the FEMA operations are kind of happening on the north side of town, where it's mostly concentrated in town, etc. So, I mean, I haven't seen a lot of, it's mostly, I'm in the line of where they've kind of commandeered the airport, is where most of the traffic is coming right over me. So it's like nonstop with Black Hawks and Chinooks and you name it, So I can't really say one way or another, and I'm definitely not going to say concretely what people are doing and what they are not. I don't know if you have a particular view on that, at least from the stories you're. See, Coot, are you on X, by the way? I didn't remember if you were on Twitter.
No, I have an account that it was a work account, Nobody asked what it is. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I don't post on there. There's nothing worth seeing on there. It was just a job I used to have. There's an account I ran for that job, and so anyway, I'll just use it every now and then to if I need to, because Twitter, like many companies, has done this thing to where you can't view anything on the site unless you have an account, which is super annoying. And so, anyway, I don't post on there. I don't really follow hardly anybody.
Were you Pete Buttigieg's secretary? Could just tell us. Was that your what? Sorry.
Is that guy not still on his 6-year-long paternity leave? Did he finally come back?
Yeah. I don't know if this was a headline. This is another one. Like I keep saying, he keeps being brought up, or he keeps throwing himself in front of cameras. And I didn't know if this was a real headline or not. But they were saying Pete Buttigieg comes out as HIV positive, and I was like, well, this is, I don't know. I can't tell what this one is. Because I think it was the what's the 911 count or whatever. They're like, well, this is fake. I'm like, well, is it? I don't know.
Who knows? There was one of the Nick Mullen had a great tweet several years ago, which got the very small Pete Buttigieg fandom very angry during the last election, where he said, "I'm really looking forward to the 2024 Netflix true crime special about the spousal murder of Jason Buttigieg."
Oh yeah.
So anyway, I did find the Glenn Beck. His quote. He said, "I've seen one FEMA truck. They arrived last night. It is absolutely ridiculous what the federal government is doing. I really don't think they care. There are people that are still dying." Now, I haven't watched the video. I didn't get a chance to watch the video that's attached to this. But one thing that we talk about a lot about the misinfo, disinfo, this kind of thing, and how that's often weaponized. But I think it's worth mentioning that that is a real thing, though. Like, there's a lot of hoaxes. I mean, people can remember that hospital in Italy. Was it Italy or hospital somewhere where they were supposed to show all these people on ventilators, and it was a bunch of medical testing dummies that were that were in their same thing, like where they I can't remember if it was a Lebanon thing or something, Syria. It was one of the big news networks had posted. I played this video of what was supposed to be rockets being fired. It was like a night vision video of rockets supposedly being fired somewhere.
Yeah.
Turns out it was a gun range in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And so, and people, there's all kinds of scam. Like when the thing in Ukraine kicked off a couple years ago, there were videos purported, people saying, "Oh, this is going on right now," and then people were like, "No, that was actually somewhere else in Eastern Europe like 5 years ago."
Yeah.
And so that is a thing with social media. And so I think it's important to, and I'm not saying, I just think with any of the information, like people, and I'm not saying that Glenn Beck is wrong. I was just using that to say that is a real thing of where people will make these videos on social media saying, "Oh, this is what's going on," and it's like, well, there's no video. Like, this is just someone talking, making these claims, and I'm not to be all like, well, what's your source for that? But with these kinds of things, it's like being able to back it up. But again, I mean, I think it goes back to all of the with cell phone service being down. It seemed like, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed like from what you and Daniel were saying earlier, it almost kind of seemed like that you don't even really know exactly what's going on, just because of kind of being limited in terms of travel, being limited in terms of communication. Is that accurate? Like that you don't even really know what's happening even in your own region?
I could say I could certainly understand that. Certainly, particularly with this storm up that side of town, because like I said, I think in my area we were particularly lucky to have power, at least some power, and so some communication was happening. But the way it kind of sounded on the radio, it just sounded like everything in town, north of town, and around, it was just completely out. And at least, again, I don't know. I was mentioning earlier, I knew some people were saying they didn't lose service at all, which were kind of like AT&T, T-Mobile, U.S. Cellular. Well, no, they lost it for some of the time, but anyway, so I can imagine, I can certainly see that being pretty accurate, especially people trying to get out and about. And nothing's way. Of course, everybody's relying on GPS and you name it. And I mean, I can certainly see that being the case. I'm not going to speak for any city officials or any of that, you know what I mean? But I can certainly see that being the case, because it was definitely, I can say Friday when I got out, it was very, very confusing. And we didn't even get into my little experience, I guess I shared with you guys, is I think when I sent a girl who uploaded, she must have been there too, but her experience of everybody getting jammed in the grocery store, and then there was a shooting next door.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to get into that?
It was crazy. I can, that kind of plays into the whole communication chaos, etc. Because I'm like thinking, well, we have our light is kind of working down here, and the grocery store is open, and it seems to be the only one. So I better run in and see if I can grab any necessities. Who knows how long this is going to last? The typical stuff you think, And I'm driving in there, and there's a huge line for gas, and then there's a gas station. There's a grocery store with their own gas, and people are lined up to get that. And then next door is the gas station, basically. So it's basically they're right beside each other, pretty much, on the same side of the street. And so there's lines just for both of them at the wazoo, and everybody's trying to get in there and park. And I finally get in and finally park, It's like, okay, and I'm just kind of strolling along because I see there's a line formed outside of the door to get in. I'm like, well, this is probably going to be a while, and at least a couple hours, I'm expecting. And as soon as I make it up to the line, there's 3 or 4 of the managers or employees, and they're like, everybody get in now. There's somebody shooting next door. Or whatever. I was like, what? And like, there are all these, Latino folks in line, and et cetera. And, I'm not going to say, accuse anybody of being citizens or not. Who knows? I don't know. I'm not saying anything, but there was a huge line of Latinos, and they just bolt in there, and everybody's running in there. And of course, along the lines earlier, like I was saying, a lot of the good old boys, they just don't care. They're just, well, okay, well, let's just leave. I don't want to be here for this. And they're strolling in there. They're like, hey, get the fuck out of here. And I just turn around and go out, and everybody else is running in. That's just like, whoa, this is wild, And so I'm assuming they're going to lock the doors, close them up, lock them, and not let anybody out for a while. And so they're like, we've called the police, but it's next door. And I'm like, what do you mean next door? Is it over this way, that way, that way? It's like, oh, well, we're not sure yet. And so there you go. There's your communication problems. And so yes, apparently it was at the gas station that was next door. And by this point, the I guess digital side, or using credit cards, etc., for the store wasn't working. So immediately it's cash only. They switch in. Of course, that just causes another hurdle, right? And then so everybody's leaving to go line up at the ATMs. And so anyway, and eventually, I will say though that I can only speak from what I saw. This is anecdotal, of course, and people asking how they're behaving here. Is it martial law yet, and all this stuff. The police came in. They were they were prompt. Like, people were getting out of the way and helping. And I said the ambulance came through. They pulled right up in there. And when I was leaving, I kind of saw what was going on. And apparently, I'm assuming that the gas station, not only they went to cash, and then they're putting caps on the amount, which was like
Mhm.
$25, something like that. So I'm sure that was pissing off a lot of people. And I can only imagine they probably say, yeah, we're doing cash only. And somebody just probably got pissed off and, and just, or they're telling people are just waiting forever. They were sitting there for hours just trying to move them in one by one to get them in the lanes. So, yeah, it was crazy there. That was Friday, I believe. So, and a lot of places are still. I'm speaking kind of what's going on south of town, but it's slowly kind of opening back up, and some places are card and cash. Some places are still cash only. I was in the grocery store yesterday. I posted that it's still cash only, and they're like, "Well, we're going to be out of that." They had like everything roped off that could have gotten conceivably messed up or not dated, but kind of like expired food, because there no refrigeration was working. Everything's roped off, and of course all the milk's gone, all the dairy's gone. It was basically like, everybody I kept bumping into, I said, well, at least it's not toilet paper. We have plenty of toilet paper there, Brad. They're like, yeah, that's true. So,
folks, this is why you need high quality soilable food from preparewithalex.com.
visit patriotsupply.com, and where Mike Adams is supplying us right now while I pay my $2.5 trillion to the families or whatever it is now. Oh gosh, folks, I'm not bragging, but we were going to throw in some Papa Ewok today, of course. So we have to do our impressions. So I'm not bragging, but what's my favorite one lately is I'm not bragging, but folks, I can basically look at a woman and get her pregnant. Okay, everybody.
One of my favorite clips recently was the one where his wife was getting interviewed by the British guy, and he comes in and just crashes the interview. And
yeah, he's just kind of nonchalant. He's standing off to the side while she's talking. And he just goes, all right, y'all be feeling what's going on here? What's going on over here? Oh, the British? Yeah, they're dog shit. Okay. They're complete shit. Okay. And he just walks off.
It's like, some of them are good. They're not all bad. A lot of them are bad. Well, some of them are good people.
Yeah.
Some of them are patriots.
Oh, man.
Which I thought I'd do the same thing. Like, I'll make a generalization, and then I'll come back and amend it, and then I'll come back and amend it again. And again, it's like I can't move on till I've gotten all these caveats in there. I did. This was one thing I did when I said we're kind of jumping around all over the place, which is fun. That's how we do things over here. There was we were talking about FEMA and Mayorkas, whatever that guy's, Alejandro Mayorkas. There's an article from the failing New York Times that said that
F in the chat.
Yeah, F's in the chat. I'm gonna put one right now for the failing New York Times. Mayorkas warns of funding shortfall for rest of hurricane season. Now this was from October 2nd. FEMA does not have enough. Is it going to show me the photo? Yes. Okay, it's not paywalled. Does not have enough funding to ride out the remainder of the hurricane season, Mayorkas said. The announcement comes as FEMA is conducting search and rescue operations in remote sections of Appalachia 6 days after Hurricane Helene, causing widespread destruction and the deaths of at least 183 people across 6 states. We are meeting the immediate needs with the money that we have, Mr. Mayorkas told reporters on Wednesday while en route to meet with officials in South Carolina. We are expecting another hurricane hitting. We do not have the funds. FEMA does not have the funds to make it through the season. Now, I don't know if this gets into the issue of them spending it on the migrants. There's kind of a short article. So anyway, it's basically just saying that, so there was a bill, I guess, a stopgap bill that Biden signed into law last week containing additional $16 billion for FEMA. Preliminary assessments of the damage from Moody's and others predicts a cleanup effort that could cost tens of billions. And so, again, it's like they have what was it? What was that thing from Blinken? where they just sent 157. Now, granted, okay, you could say, well, that's a different group within the government. Okay, but they also just sent 157 million dollars for Lebanon, and it's like, okay, yeah, but they have, and they just sent. I mean, they've sent what, probably over 100 billion at this point to Ukraine, and then they say, oh well, we can't do anything for the citizens of the country in national disasters because we don't have the money. And so I mean, again, that's like a giant FU to the people who are affected by this. And it's staggering to me that, just the way things are run, just the total apathy, the total, FUs to the people of this country, to where, yeah, you can send tens of billions, if not, hundreds of billions to other countries. But yeah, God forbid you do anything to, try to help people in your own country. And I mean, it's kind of like that video you sent, that Instagram reel of the guy who was, we kind of touched on this earlier about the helicopters. The guy who was out there with his son, the guy who came up from South Carolina, was out there with his son, and they were, going and rescuing people. And then he, found this couple, picked the wife up, took her, and, runs into this fire chief, or assistant chief. He didn't know who he was, some official with the fire department. And the guy at the fire department, so because he left his son and the husband up, on this, where he'd picked up the woman up from. And so he told him, like, yeah, I'll come back. And then the guy told him, like, no, you can't go up there. If you do that, you'll get fired. You're not get fired. You'll get arrested. And again, okay, yeah, that's fire chief, not FEMA or whatever. But I mean, to see, and I've heard other reports, and I didn't look into the details, but I've seen other reports of people basically being shut down by governments, whether it's state, local, federal, whether it's state, like whatever it may be, and that, no, you can't do anything. It's like, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to, again, from what I can tell, it's like, we're going to look like we're doing something. Nobody's going to do anything, but we can't have other people looking like they're doing something. We have to do nothing. And I don't know if it's a just control kind of thing, if it's arrogance, if it's, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think, what are the reasonings behind that? And again, I mean, this is this guy's, account of it. I mean, he seemed believable. He said it was sad because he said he did go and pick up his son, but he told the guy, he was like, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. And had to leave the guy there. So it's, I don't know. It just, to see that sort of crack down on people who were trying to help, so that, the most inefficient, ineffective people can do nothing, is kind of infuriating.
I was trying to remember his details of his story in particular. I think they were trying to say that he did not communicate with anybody, let anybody know he was coming, or any type of coordination. And he's like, well, I'll tell you my background. He's like, former police officer, firefighter, and I mean, on down the list, right? And certified and this and that. And it's like, and I don't know, he was saying in the video that he did communicate, he did reach out beforehand, etc. And at least to some people, it must not have been the fire chief, I guess. But anyway, yeah, eventually it gets word up to him. And there's, like you said, they're saying, well, you go back in, you're arrested, and etc. And so, yeah, he had left his son. He's like, well, I'm going. He kept calling him his co-pilot. So I'm going to go back and get my co-pilot. And so, yeah, he goes go back, gets his son, and like you said, he brings the wife, and oh, sorry, somebody stopped. But, and yeah, leaves the husband behind and all that. And then I noticed there was later someone was interviewing, I guess probably one of the Asheville officials. They wanted to talk to, somebody, city council member or something. They just like sent a lower level lackey out to like address this guy in the media asking questions about it. He's like, well, I mean, he claims that and this, that, and he has receipts. Like he talks about he's buying gasoline and he has all these receipts that he showed beforehand and all that. And then basically it came down to like, well, it just wasn't safe, and she was still holding the line that, he didn't communicate with anybody and all this type of stuff. And it's turning out that later on, he was saying later on that they were inviting people into that area and, letting people in there anyway. And then, and I think later on, if my memory serves, they did let him go back in later. And they're like, so why couldn't you go in earlier? And then later you're doing this and that. And so she's, giving every excuse pretty much, it sounded to me. So yeah, that was an interesting one there.
Yeah, it was a pretty pretty bizarre situation. So I don't know. I mean, is there? That was pretty much everything I had. Like I said, Jethro sent a ton of links. I'm gonna get all those in the description. There's a lot of interesting information there, dealing with a lot of the things that we've talked about. So that was all I did. Is there anything else that you think is important, or anything else you wanted to hit before we wrap it up?
Well, not really that I can think of. I would just encourage everybody. I think the best thing that we can do is just stay on the social media and try to highlight. Certainly people that are trying to do their best to coordinate with commodity supplies, anything, donate to those people as best you can. We're trying to, that's what I was telling a lot of people. It's like, for the most part, if you don't want to go and volunteer, like handing out food at churches or whatever, it's kind of hard to, they have a lot of these places, of course, blocked off. So it's hard to get to them to go out and help unless you're like some of these people with helicopters or ATVs or whatever to try to get in there, So I would say definitely do not donate to the usual suspects. We'll say REDCROSS. Definitely do not donate to them or encourage people to donate to them. Like I said, I would try to stay up to date on it. Definitely on Twitter, because I'm seeing all kinds of people just getting all kinds of influx of donations and you name it. And definitely on Instagram, everybody's throwing up their stories, and that seems to be the only way to keep a lot of it alive in the news. Anyway, It's just all of us trying to crank it out on social media with our own videos and retweets and all that kind of stuff. And the other little interesting thing is, I'll say, as far as the death toll, I'm hearing all kinds of stories. I'll just put it this way. I don't think the 200 number is going to be accurate eventually. I'll put it that way.
You think it's much higher?
Well,
or lower?
Well, we'll say higher.
Mm-hmm.
I've been hearing a lot of, and again, this is anecdotal, so nothing's completely concrete, but stories, like Hendo was kind of mentioning earlier, just people going around and that's all they're doing all day is just picking up people out of rivers and you name it and throwing them in their refrigerated trucks or whatever. And some people are saying there's supposedly around 1,000 bodies at the hospital right now. I don't know if that's true or not. It would not surprise me. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of the main thing is I probably wouldn't trust a lot of certain things like that, certain numbers they're reporting right now. I say nothing's pretty much concrete. I'll just put it that way. But anyway, but yeah, that's what I'll definitely do what you can on the social media while we still got it. I'll say that. That's probably the best thing we can do, and your donations. And definitely telling your friends, like, I'm sure a lot of people, like, who was it you were saying that Dan had to tell Mela, and Mela wasn't aware of it. It's like, yeah, a lot of our friends on the other side of the country, like, what's going on, and they're just starting aware of it. But now it's starting to, I'm sure they're trying to move on with the next, the next story, etc. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, but we're just not going to let it, we're not letting it, I hate to use the word, we're not letting it die. Certainly what we're doing is we're going to keep it in the news cycle. So you're going to have to, at least contend with that to some degree. So anyway, but Coots, thanks for letting us come on. I wish it was under better circumstances that we could do a show together again.
Yeah. Well, we do have that McVeigh stream coming up, folks. I know we've been talking about it for a long time. It is coming. There's been a lot going on, especially lately. So I am getting towards making good progress on finishing the book. And I know Jethro, he's dealing with other things. So it is coming. So we'll get you back on here. Definitely looking forward to that one. And yeah, keep sharing. That's another thing. People just try to vet and authenticate things as much as you can. And yeah, I think it's important that we're still talking about Katrina. We're still talking about Maui. We're still talking about anyway, we've been going through a lot today, but in any of these kind of situations and the weirdness surrounding them, and the abysmal response to them, and so yeah, keep putting this stuff out there. One thing I've not done in the past, in every case, is yes, absolutely, John Connor, yes, and keep praying. Is to archive things if there's something that you think is important, because there have been things. One quick example is, I think I've talked about this on the show before. Chris Kyle, of American Sniper fame, he claimed that he was, up there smoking people during Katrina who were looting, and then everybody can, and especially because the Jesse Ventura thing, people kind of
I know Chris Kyle very well. I was the governor of Minnesota. I know Chris Kyle. I got to work on my Ventura. I'm not Sasso level. I was
But yeah, the people, he made that claim, and people are like, "Oh, Chris Kyle's a liar. He's just trying to, seem like he's a bad." They wouldn't send people to go take people out, American citizens. Well, I didn't archive this. I should have. Years ago, in the wake of Katrina, I read an interview with a musician, kind of a well-known musician in the New Orleans metal scene, and he said that after Katrina, that they had snipers that were shooting people in New Orleans, and he said nobody really knows about that. And then, so I always remembered that, but I didn't screenshot it. I didn't save the article in any way. And then years later, when the whole thing with Chris Kyle came out, people were like, "Oh, this guy's a liar." I was like, no, wait a minute. Like, I'm not saying that's definitive proof, but it's like somebody saying this back in like 2007, 2008, and 2006, whenever it was. And then I've never been able to find that interview again. And so anyway, that's just an anecdote to say that there's important things out there, whether it's, screen recording videos, screenshots, whatever it is. You never know where that kind of thing may be useful down the line, and the level of censorship even on Twitter. I know Elon pays lip service to free speech. From people who are active on there, I've heard that is simply not the case. That he's still very much a lot of their censorship policies are the same as it was under all the other CEOs they've had. So anyway. Yeah. So, any last final thoughts?
Coot, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Like John said, yes, definitely keep everybody in your prayers. We're going to keep, I haven't really ventured into town, but I've spoken to some people who are other sides of the country, family here, and as things start to progress or get better, if you want me to try and physically go out, check on anybody, I'll do my best. I'll definitely do that, or take anything to anybody. I volunteer. I'm here, so I'm here and able. So anyway, so Coot, thanks for having all of us. It's a pleasure to know all you guys. Big shout out to all the homies in chat. I don't want to go name all of you individually because I'm sure I'll leave somebody out, but you all know who you are. And with that, Coot, my phone is about to die. It feels like it feels like a pager that's about to, well, I don't know if I can say that on here.
I know where you're going with that.
I think a signal is being sent to it right now, so I better turn it off for a while or something.
Yeah, Mayorkas, he heard what we were saying about him, and he didn't like that. So anyway, yeah, thanks again for being here, and we'll looking forward to the next one, and yeah, stay safe out there.
All right.
All right. Well, it was good to get some on the ground reporting from from people who were there. So yeah, that was a good one. Really enjoyed that one. It was great having Baselit Analyzer, Daniel, and Jethro all in the all coming on, hanging out. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Again, yeah, like Jethro said, I tried to give everybody a shout out, but I feel like I missed people, and so apologies if I've ever missed anybody. But thank you, everybody. It's nice to see some, recurring. We have the people that tune in regularly, and I appreciate y'all. And I've seen some new names in the chat today as well. So it's been really cool to have everybody here. So I guess that's pretty much it. BLA and I are planning to do a Spooktober movie stream. I got to get with him and find out exactly what's going on with that, and so yeah, we have that planned. So that'll be coming up sometime soon. And other than that, yeah, like I said, I'll put all these. There's going to be a ton of links, a lot of research and reading and watching to do that. I recommend people check some of these out, and use discernment and critical thinking, and everything I've seen seems to be pretty solid from what Jethro sent. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. So take care, everybody, and I will hopefully see y'all again soon.